The weight of the day pressed down on me, a physical thing in the stale air of my apartment hallway. Mr. Henderson had kept me late again, something about quarterly reports that could have been an email. The fluorescent lights hummed, casting a sick yellow glare on the peeling paint. I fumbled the key into the lock, the metal grating with a familiar complaint. The door swung open into the comfortable gloom of my place. My place. The only place the world couldn't touch me. I dropped my messenger bag onto the armchair. It slid off and hit the floor with a dull thud. I didn't bother picking it up. I walked straight to the small kitchen counter that separated the living space from the cooking space. My hand went to the small ceramic bowl where one always, without fail, tossed my keys. Empty. A flash of irritation. I patted my pants pockets. Nothing. I checked the other pocket. Still nothing. I turned and looked back at the armchair, the bag slumped on the floor beside it. I walked over, kneeled down, and rummaged through the contents. Laptop. A half-eaten protein bar. Pens. No keys. Seriously? I muttered to the empty room. I stood up and ran a hand through my hair. I could picture it. Henderson's droning voice, the headache building behind my eyes, me walking in on autopilot. I must have left them in the door. My blood went cold for a second. I spun around and checked. The key wasn't in the lock. Okay, don't panic. Think. I retraced my steps. I came in, I locked the door. I always lock the door. A triple check of the deadbolt was muscle memory, and then I walked to the kitchen. So where? My eyes landed on the coat closet by the entrance. I never use it. I always throw my jacket on the back of a chair. But today, for some reason, the closet door was slightly ajar. I walked over and pulled it open. There was my jacket, hanging neatly on a hanger. I plunged my hand into the pocket. The familiar, jagged shape of my keys met my fingers. I pulled them out and stared at them. I didn't remember hanging up my jacket. I didn't remember putting the keys in the pocket after locking the door. Brain fart, I said out loud, the sound absorbed by the quiet. Getting old, Leo. I walked back to the kitchen, tossed the keys into the ceramic bowl with a satisfying clatter, and decided to forget about it. It was a long day. People do weird things when they're tired. The cheap, frozen pizza tasted like cardboard, as usual. I was sprawled on the couch, half watching some mind-numbing game show on TV. The fake laughter of the audience was a decent substitute for actual human noise. The building was its usual self, a symphony of muffled thuds from upstairs. The distant wail of a siren on the street below, the groan of the ancient pipes in the walls. I knew these sounds, they were the white noise of my solitude. Click. It wasn't one of the building sounds. It was sharp, precise, close. It came from the front door. It wasn't loud. It was the kind of sound you'd miss if the TV was at a normal volume. But it was definitive, like a single gear turning into place, or a lock settling. I grabbed the remote and hit mute. The fake laughter vanished, leaving a sudden, heavy silence. The hum of the refrigerator seemed to grow louder, filling the void. I sat perfectly still, my entire body a listening device. My ears strained, trying to catch a follow-up sound. Footsteps in the hall. A cough. A neighbor fumbling with their own door. Nothing. Just the low thrum of the building's tired heart. Something was wrong. It was a feeling, deep in my gut. An animal instinct. The air in the room felt different. Heavier. I slowly swung my legs off the couch, placing my feet on the floor without a sound. The pizza sat forgotten on the coffee table. My annoyance from earlier was gone, replaced by a low, simmering unease. I stood up. My bare feet made no noise on the worn hardwood floor as I moved toward the door. Each step was deliberate. I felt like a trespasser in my own home. My gaze was fixed on the door, a solid rectangle of wood that was supposed to keep the world out. My heart was starting to beat a little faster, a low thrum against my ribs. I reached the door and pressed my ear against the cool wood. Silence. Not the normal silence of an empty hallway, but a held breath kind of silence. I pulled back and leaned forward, putting my eye to the peephole. The fisheye lens distorted the hallway into a long, curved tunnel under that same sickly yellow light. It was empty. The door to Mrs. Gable's apartment across the hall was shut. The elevator at the far end was closed. No one. Nothing. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Maybe it was just the building settling. An old building makes strange sounds. I was about to turn away, to dismiss it as a product of my tired mind, when my phone vibrated in my pocket. The sharp buzz against my thigh made me jump, a strangled yelp catching in my throat. I cursed under my breath, my hand trembling as I pulled the phone out. It was a text from an unknown number, just a string of digits I didn't recognize. The message was 4 words. "Lock your door carefully." I stared at the screen. The letters glowed in the dim light of my entryway. Time seemed to stretch. My blood turned to ice water. The casual click, the empty hallway, and now this. This wasn't random. This wasn't the building settling, my hand shot out, my fingers fumbling against the locks. The deadbolt. It was already thrown. Solid. I twisted it anyway, just to feel the resistance. I checked the chain. It was already in its slide. Secure. The door was locked. It had been locked the whole time. I knew it. So what the hell did the message mean? Hey. A wave of cold dread washed over me. It felt like eyes were on my back. Even inside my locked apartment. I spun around, scanning the shadows in the living room. The darkened screen of the TV. The black rectangle of the window showing nothing but my own pale reflection. Everything was as it should be, but nothing felt right. My fingers, clumsy and shaking, typed out a reply. "Who is this?" I hit send. I watched the screen, waiting for the 3 little dots to appear, signaling a reply. They never came. The message was sent, delivered, and met with pure, digital silence. It knows. The thought slammed into my brain with the force of a physical blow. Whoever sent that message knew I heard the click. They knew I was at the door. They were playing with me. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. My throat was dry. I swallowed, but it felt like sandpaper. I backed away from the door, my eyes darting around the room. The familiar comfort of my apartment was gone, replaced by 100 dark corners where anything could be hiding. My laptop was on the coffee table, next to the half-eaten pizza. Was the camera on? I couldn't tell. The little green light was off. But that could be hacked. Everyone knew that could be hacked. I felt a desperate urge to smash it. To smash every screen in the house. I retreated further into the living room, putting the couch between myself and the door. I was breathing too fast. Get a grip, Leo. Get a grip. It's a prank. Some sick kid in the building who spoofed a number. It had to be. But the click felt real. It felt metallic. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs now. I couldn't sit still. I couldn't think straight. I needed to do something. Call the cops? And say what? Someone sent me a weird text, and I think I heard a noise? They'd laugh at me. I crept back towards the door, my body low, like a soldier in a movie. It felt ridiculous, but I couldn't help it. My own home had become enemy territory. I pressed my ear to the door again. This time, I controlled my breathing, making it shallow and silent. Silence. Just the low hum of the fridge. The gentle whisper of air through the vents. For a full minute, there was nothing. My tense muscles began to relax. Maybe I had imagined it all. A perfect storm of exhaustion and paranoia. Maybe I was losing my mind. And then I heard it. It was so quiet I wasn't sure I heard it at first. A sound so small it was almost imperceptible. Scrape. A tiny metallic whisper. Coming from the lock. Tink. My breath caught in my chest. My blood froze. It was the sound of metal touching metal inside the lock cylinder. It was slow, deliberate, not the fumbling of a drunk neighbor at the wrong door. This was quiet. This was patient. Scrape. Click. Tink. Someone was trying a key in my door. Right now. On the other side of this thin piece of wood. I backed away, my feet silent on the floor. My throat closed up. I couldn't scream. I couldn't even breathe. My eyes darted around the room, wide with panic, searching for something. Anything. A weapon. The floor lamp was too flimsy. The TV was mounted to the wall. My gaze fell on the thick glass ashtray on the end table, a housewarming gift I'd never used. It was heavy. Solid. I grabbed it, my palms slick with sweat, The glass was cold against my skin. I flattened myself against the wall next to the door, my heart hammering so hard I was sure they could hear it. I held the ashtray up, ready to swing. I was a cornered animal. The scraping stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the sound. 100 times worse. It was deafening. Charged. A vacuum waiting for the explosion. Did they hear me? Did they know I was standing here? Are they about to kick the door in? My muscles screamed with tension, every fiber of my being coiled tight, waiting for the impact. 1 second. 2 seconds. A minute. Nothing. The hallway outside remained tomb quiet. The silence stretched on, thin and brittle. It felt like a lifetime. My arms started to ache from holding up the ashtray. Slowly, agonizingly, I lowered it. My breathing came in ragged, quiet gasps. What happened? Why did they stop? Why? I had to know. The not knowing was a separate kind of torture. I took a slow, silent step towards the door. Then another. My body screamed at me to run, to hide in the bathroom and call 911. But my legs carried me forward. I needed to see. I needed to know what was out there. With a hand that shook so badly I could barely control it, I reached for the peephole. I took one last, deep breath and put my eye to the lens. The distorted, yellow-lit hallway, empty, exactly as before. Relief washed over me, so potent it made me dizzy. My legs felt weak. It was over. Whoever it was, they were gone. I almost laughed. A hysterical, broken sound. My gaze drifted downwards, tracing the curve of the fisheye lens to the floor outside my door, to my doormat, and my heart stopped. There, sitting squarely in the center of the worn, brown mat, was a key. It wasn't mine. It was old, the kind of key you'd see in a black and white movie. The head was ornate, almost like a flower, and the shaft was covered in a thin layer of rust. It was dark, almost black in the dim light. It wasn't there before. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that 2 minutes ago, that patch of doormat had been empty. Someone had stood right there. They had tried this key in my lock. It hadn't worked. And they left it there. A gift. A promise. A goddamn calling card. I stared, my eye pressed to the glass, until the key blurred, and the empty hallway swam before me. I wasn't safe. My locks meant nothing, and whoever was out there, they wanted me to know it. Sleep didn't come. It circled, a vulture in the dark, but never landed. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it, the dark, ornate key sitting on my doormat, a stain on the fabric of my world, a promise. My heart did a frantic, stuttering rhythm against my ribs all night. The building's groans, the sounds I used to find comforting were now all footsteps. Every creak of the pipes was the slow turn of a lock. I was up before my alarm, the gray light of dawn filtering through the blinds like dirty water. I couldn't stay here. Not with that thing outside. I got dressed in the dark, pulling on clothes that felt like a stranger's. I didn't turn on the lights. Didn't want to see my reflection in the dark TV screen. Didn't want to see what else might be reflected there with me. My plan was simple. Get out, go to work. Pretend last night was a bad dream, a hallucination brought on by stress and cheap pizza. I grabbed my messenger bag. My hand hovered over the ceramic bowl. My keys were there. Safe. Real. I snatched them, the familiar jangle, a small comfort in the crushing silence. At the door, I took a breath. My hand was on the deadbolt. I had to look. I had to. I put my eye to the peephole. The hallway was empty, steeped in the pre-dawn gloom. And there it was. The key. Still sitting on the mat. It looked blacker now, a small, jagged hole in reality. I unlocked the door, the sound of the bolt sliding back like a gunshot. I swung it open, grabbed the key without letting my skin touch it, using the edge of a junk mail flyer, and walked quickly down the hall to the garbage chute. I didn't run. Running meant you were scared. I was just cleaning up. The metal flap of the chute was cold. I dropped the key in. I didn't hear it land. Just a metallic whisper into the guts of the building. Gone. I turned and walked back to my apartment, locked the door, triple-checked it. A weirdo kid in the building. Some goth teenager thought it would be funny. That's all it was. It had to be. The office was a refuge of noise and light. The steady hum of computers, the smell of burnt coffee, the drone of my boss, Mr. Henderson, talking about synergy. I sank into it. I let the mundane routine wash over me, a baptism of normalcy. I stared at spreadsheets until my eyes burned. I answered emails. I made small talk by the water cooler. For hours, it worked. The fear receded, became a dull, low throb in the back of my skull. I was Leo, the guy who works in accounting, not the man who was hunted in his own home. I was fine. My phone buzzed on the desk. A text from my sister. Dinner Friday? I almost smiled. A normal text. A normal plan. I was about to type a reply when the notification banner for my email popped up at the top of my screen. The sender was a jumble of letters and numbers. A spam address. The subject line had 2 words. Nice shirt. My blood ran cold. I looked down. I was wearing a plain, light blue button-down. A shirt I'd owned for years. There was nothing remarkable about it. It was just a shirt. A blue shirt. My eyes shot up, scanning the open-plan office. Dozens of people, heads down, staring at their own screens. A few people chatting by the coffee machine. No one was looking at me. No one was paying any attention. This was a coincidence. It had to be. A ridiculously specific, terrifying coincidence. Some spam bot scraped my data from a clothing store website where I'd bought a blue shirt once. That was it. That was the logical answer. But my hands were shaking. I couldn't stop them. I placed them under the desk, pressing them flat against my thighs. My heart was starting that frantic rhythm again. The hum of the office was no longer comforting. It was a mask, hiding something else. I tried to focus on the spreadsheet. The numbers swam. They meant nothing. All I could think about was the email. Nice shirt. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't an insult. It was a statement of fact. A simple observation. And that's what made it so terrifying. It was proof of presence. I deleted the email without opening it, dragged it to the trash, emptied the trash. As if that would do anything, my phone buzzed again. An email. The same sender. This time the subject was just a single character. A period. And there was an attachment. A .jpeg file. My mouth went dry. My throat felt like it was closing up. Don't open it. Just delete it. Delete it and walk out of this building and go to the police. Tell them what? That you got a weird email? After a key was left at your door, they'd look at me like I was insane. My cursor hovered over the attachment. It was a magnetic pull. I had to know. The not knowing was worse. I clicked. The image loaded. It was a picture taken from far away. From high up, through a window. It was a picture of my office building. The lens had zoomed in on one specific window. My window. I could see my desk. I could see my monitor. And I could see the back of my own head. A small, dark shape. A figure in a light blue shirt. The image was grainy, distorted by the distance in the glass, but it was me. It was me, right now. Or a few minutes ago. He was in the building across the street, looking right at me. Click. It was a sound so small I almost didn't register it. A tiny, plastic noise. It came from the top of my laptop screen. The webcam. The green light wasn't on, but the sound was unmistakable. The click of a lens shutter opening. My breath hitched. My vision tunneled. The entire office, the dozens of people, the lights, the sounds, it all vanished. There was only me, the screen, and the unseen eye in the building across the street. And now, another eye, inches from my face. A scream built in my chest, hot and sharp. I slammed the laptop shut. The crack of the plastic hinge was loud in the sudden, sharp focus of my own personal hell. My chair screeched as I shoved it back, stumbling to my feet. "Leo, everything okay?" a voice asked. It was Sarah from the next cubicle. I couldn't answer. I just stared at her, my eyes wide. Her face was a blur. I bolted. I ran to the wall of windows at the end of the office, my hands slapping against the cool glass. I stared, wild-eyed, at the building opposite. A monument of glass and steel. 100 identical windows staring back at me. 100 places for someone to hide. Which one? Which floor? Who was it? My mind screamed, but no sound came out. He could be watching me right now. watching my panic, enjoying it. My phone rang. The sound tore through me, a physical shock. I ripped it out of my pocket. Unknown number. The same number from last night. My thumb trembled over the screen. No, don't answer. Don't let him in. But he was already in. He was in my computer. He was across the street. He was everywhere. I had to answer. I needed a voice, a demand, something to fight against. I swiped to accept the call and pressed the phone to my ear, my whole body shaking. "Who is this?" I choked out. "What do you want?" Silence. No, not silence. There was a sound on the other end of the line. A soft, rhythmic sound. A wet, ragged noise. Air being pulled in and forced out. It was breathing. And it was mine. I was listening to a recording of my own panicked, ragged breaths. The ones I was taking right now. A split-second delay. A perfect, terrifying echo. He wasn't just watching, he was listening. Right now, through my phone. I ripped the phone away from my ear and smashed the end call button. I stared at the device in my palm, this rectangle of glass and metal that had become a weapon against me. It felt contaminated, unclean. I wanted to hurl it against the wall, shatter it into 1,000 pieces. I just stood there, in the middle of the office, people starting to stare. I could feel their eyes on me. Were they all in on it? Was this some giant, sick joke? My gaze fell back to my phone's screen, and the world stopped. The screen wasn't black. My background, a stock photo of a beach I'd never bothered to change, was gone. In its place was a new picture. It was a photograph of me, sleeping. My face was slack, my mouth slightly open. The light was dim, the kind that comes from a street lamp filtering through the blinds. The angle was low, from the foot of my bed. Close, so close you could see the texture of the blanket. It was taken last night, while I slept, while I thought I was alone. He hadn't been trying a key in my lock because he couldn't get in. He had been trying a key in my lock on his way out. I didn't wait for the elevator. I hit the emergency stairs, my dress shoes slipping on the concrete, the sound of my own ragged gasps echoing in the narrow well. Each flight down was a victory. Each landing, a prayer. The picture on my phone was burned onto my retinas. Me, asleep. The angle low, from the foot of my bed. He wasn't trying to get in. He was already in. He had been in my bed, in my room, watching me. The taxi ride was a blur of smeared city lights. I gave the driver my address, my voice a dry rasp. I sat in the back, phone clutched in a white-knuckled fist, the screen dark. I couldn't look at it again. It felt hot, radioactive. A portal he had opened into my life. The driver kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror. I probably looked like a madman. I didn't care. I paid in cash, fumbling with the bills, and bolted from the car before it had even fully stopped. I slammed the heavy front door of the apartment building behind me. The lobby was empty, thank God. I took the elevator this time, my leg jiggling uncontrollably, my eyes fixed on the floor indicator as it crept upwards. 3, 4, 5. It felt like an eternity. The ding of my floor was like an alarm. The hallway was quiet. My door waited at the end. My sanctuary. My tomb. My key trembled in my hand. It took 3 tries to get it into the lock. The click of the deadbolt sliding open felt like a death sentence. I pushed the door open with my foot, my heart hammering against my ribs, a trapped bird wanting out. The apartment was dark. Silent, exactly as I'd left it. But it wasn't the same. It was violated. The air was thick, heavy, with the memory of his presence. I flipped the switch. The light felt weak, anemic. I did a sweep. Room by room, my breath held tight in my chest. First, the living room closet. Empty, just my coat and a vacuum cleaner. Then the kitchen pantry. Cans and boxes. Behind the shower curtain in the bathroom. Nothing but tile and a bottle of shampoo. Under my bed. My hand shook as I lifted the dust ruffle. Only a single cardboard box filled with old things I should have thrown out years ago. He wasn't here now. But the proof of him was everywhere. In the air I breathed. In the knowledge of what had happened. I went back to the living room. My laptop sat on the coffee table. The laptop he had used. The eye of the webcam stared back at me, a tiny black dot. A blind, all-seeing God. I ripped a piece of packing tape from a roll in the kitchen drawer and slapped it over the lens. A useless gesture. A child's defense against the monster under the bed. But it made me feel a fraction better. I locked the door, double-bolted it, engaged the chain. I went to the window, the one that looked out over the street, and made sure the latch was secure. It was. It probably had been last night, too. How did he get in? The question was a useless, screaming spiral in my head. I had to calm down. I had to think. Panicking was what he wanted. I walked into the kitchen, my movements stiff and robotic. I would do something normal. I would make myself something to eat. An omelet. Something simple. Something real. I opened the refrigerator. The cool air washed over my face. Eggs. Milk. Cheese. I pulled the egg carton out, my fingers clumsy. I set it on the counter. I turned back to the fridge to grab the milk. I saw the carton, right there, a half-gallon of 2%. I bought it Tuesday. It was sitting in the middle of the top shelf. I grabbed the handle, and I stopped. I didn't grab it. I just looked at it. Then I looked back at the counter, next to the eggs. Something was wrong. My brain stuttered. It refused to process what my eyes were seeing. I had taken the eggs out. I had put them on the counter. I had not taken the milk out, but it wasn't in the fridge anymore. I turned my head slowly, a mechanical movement. The milk carton was sitting on the kitchen counter, right on the edge, so close that the slightest vibration would send it tumbling to the floor. I hadn't put it there. I know I hadn't. My memory wasn't perfect, but this was different. This was a certainty that settled deep in my gut, cold and hard as stone. I remembered my hand reaching for the eggs. I remembered closing the fridge door partway. I remembered turning around. The space next to the eggs had been empty. This wasn't a memory lapse. This wasn't me being scatterbrained from stress. Someone had moved it. In the few seconds I had my back turned, he was here. Right now, the breath I was holding escaped in a raw, ragged sound. A name rose up from my throat, torn from me, a desperate, hopeless challenge. "Who's there?" My voice cracked. It sounded small in the space. It echoed back at me from the tile floor, from the bare walls. "Who's there?" "There, there." And then, nothing. Just the low hum of the refrigerator. The sound of my own heart, a frantic drum against my ears. I backed away from the counter, my eyes scanning the shadows, the doorways, the living room, the short hall to my bedroom. He could be anywhere, playing a game, a sick, twisted game. I ran, not for the front door. He could be waiting there. I ran for the bedroom, the only other door I could lock from the inside. I slammed it shut behind me, the wood vibrating against my back. I fumbled with the lock on the knob, my fingers slipping on the brass. It clicked into place. I sagged against the door, every muscle in my body screaming. The phone. I had to call the police. I yanked it from my pocket. My thumb smeared sweat across the screen as I swiped it open and hit the emergency call button. The call connected almost instantly. 911, what's your emergency? The woman's voice was calm, professional. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. Someone's in my apartment, I gasped, my voice barely a whisper. I pressed myself tighter against the door, as if I could physically keep him out. He's in my apartment right now. 1425 Oak Street, apartment 5B. Okay, sir, stay on the line with me. My name is Carol. Are you in a safe location? My bedroom. I locked the door. Please, you have to send someone. Help is on the way, sir. Can you tell me your name? Leo. Leo Carter. Okay, Leo. Just stay calm. Can you tell me if you saw the person? No, but he's here. He moved something in my kitchen. He took a picture of me last night while I was sleeping. The dispatcher's voice cut me off, but it wasn't her voice anymore. The calm, human tone was gone. It had been replaced by something else. Something digital. Warped. A synthesized mockery of speech. New. ONECAN SAVEYOU, LEO. The blood in my veins turned to ice. It was my name. My name, spoken by a machine from the depths of hell through my own phone, my lifeline. What? I stammered, pulling the phone away from my ear to stare at it. What did you say? The line went dead. The screen showed backquote, "Call ended," backquote. It wasn't the police. Or it was, and he had intercepted it, hacked it. He wasn't just in my house. He was in the wires, in the air. He was everywhere. The trap wasn't the apartment. The whole world was the trap. Click. The light in the bedroom went out, plunging me into absolute darkness. I screamed, a thin, high-pitched sound I didn't recognize as my own. My eyes darted around the blackness. Useless. The only light was the faint orange glow from the street lamp outside, filtering through the blinds, casting horizontal prison bars across the room. Then I heard it, on the other side of the door. A footstep, soft, incredibly light, on the hardwood floor of the hallway, followed by another, slow, deliberate, a predator conserving its energy. It stopped. Right outside my door. The silence was a physical weight. I held my breath, listening for anything. For the creak of a floorboard, a cough, a breath, nothing, just the roaring of blood in my ears. I squeezed my eyes shut. This isn't real. This isn't happening. And then I saw it. The doorknob. A simple brass knob, glinting faintly in the striped darkness. It began to turn. Slowly. So slowly. A silent, agonizing rotation. My heart stopped. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I could only watch the latch mechanism retract, the metal whispering its intent. The lock. I locked it. Please God, I locked it. The knob reached its full rotation. There was a soft thump as the door pushed uselessly against the frame. It was locked. For a single, beautiful second, there was relief. Then the knob jerked back. Thump! And again, harder. Thump! A violent, frustrated rattle that shook the whole door. He was trying to force it. He knew I was in here. He was right there, just inches of wood and metal away from me. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. The knob settled back into place. Silence again. But this silence was worse. It was full of questions. Did he give up? Is he gone? Is he getting something to break the door down? The boile chai baiman, Herrez. I stayed pressed against the far wall, huddled in the corner like a child, making myself as small as possible. I didn't dare breathe. The seconds stretched into minutes. The only sound was the frantic, terrified beat of my own heart. A new sound, a soft, dry rasp, coming from the bottom of the door. S-C-R-R-R. Scrape. Something was being pushed through the gap between the door and the floor. A piece of paper. It emerged from the darkness under the door, a pale white rectangle inching its way into my room. It stopped. It lay there on the floor, an offering, a message. I stared at it. My body refused to move. It felt like a trap. If I moved, he would know, but I had to know what it was. The not knowing was a separate kind of torture. I slid from my crouch, my knees protesting. I crawled across the floor, my movements agonizingly slow, trying to make no sound. The floorboards were cold under my palms. The paper seemed to glow in the dim light. My fingers trembled as I reached for it. It was thick, old paper, not printer paper. It felt familiar. I picked it up. I tilted it towards the slivers of light from the blinds. It wasn't a note. It wasn't a threat scrawled in blood. It was a page, yellowed with age, torn from a spiral-bound notebook. There were faint blue lines on it, and writing. A child's messy, looping cursive. My cursive. My eyes scanned the words. October 12th, 1999. Mom and Dad are fighting again. I hid in my closet. I have a secret box under the floorboard in here, where I keep my best stuff, my silver dollar, and my lucky hawk feather, and this diary. No one will ever find it. It's my secret place. I read it twice. 3 times. The world tilted and fell away. It was a page from my childhood journal. A journal I kept in a box. In a hole under a loose floorboard. In the closet of my childhood bedroom. In a house 300 miles away. A box I hadn't opened in 20 years. I didn't move. I stayed on the floor, a statue carved from fear, clutching the brittle page from my past. The thin bars of light from the blinds crawled across the room as the night wore on, tracing a slow path over the walls, the furniture, and my own frozen form. Every creak of the old building was a footstep. Every distant siren was a warning meant for me, arriving too late. Sleep didn't come. How could it? My mind was a broken record, playing the same impossible facts over and over. He was here. He had a page from my childhood diary, from a house 300 miles away. The logic didn't work. The pieces didn't fit. You can't just will an object from a hidden box into existence across state lines. It wasn't possible. Therefore, I was losing my mind. Or the alternative, which was so much worse. The rules of the world I knew had simply ceased to apply. When the gray light of dawn finally seeped through the blinds, turning the blackness into a murky soup, I knew I couldn't stay in the bedroom. To stay here was to wait for him. I had to do something. I had to act like a person who wasn't being hunted by a ghost or a god. My muscles screamed as I pushed myself up. My knees ached from the cold floor. I moved to the door, my ear pressed against the wood. Silence. Not the charged, waiting silence from last night. This was just empty. The flat, dull silence of an empty apartment in the morning. I unlocked the knob. The sound was a gunshot in the quiet. I pulled the door open an inch. The hallway was empty. The living room, visible beyond it, was just as I'd left it. The milk carton was still on the counter, a silent accusation. My phone lay on the floor by the bedroom door, where I had thrown it. I had one lifeline, one person who might not have a solution, but whose voice could pull me back from the brink. My mother. I scooped up the phone, my hand shaking so hard I almost dropped it again. The screen was cracked. I didn't care. I navigated to my contacts, my thumb smudging the glass, and hit her name. It rang once. Twice. My heart pounded with each ring. Please pick up. Please, please, please. Leo? Honey, is everything all right? It's early? Her voice. Normal. Warm. Concerned. It was an anchor in a swirling vortex of madness. I choked back a sob of pure relief. Mom, I gasped, my own voice sounding alien and strained. Mom, something's happened. What is it? Are you hurt? Leo, talk to me. I stumbled into the living room, sinking onto the edge of the sofa. I had to tell her. But what could I say? A ghost mailed me my diary? She'd think I was on drugs. I had to ground it in a reality she could understand. Someone broke into my apartment, I said, the words tumbling out. I think someone's stalking me. They took a picture of me sleeping, Mom, and last night they were here, in the apartment with me. I left out the part about the milk carton. I left out the impossible diary page. I just gave her the raw, simple fear, the part a person could believe. Oh my God, Leo, did you call the police? I tried, I said, the lie tasting like ash. The line, it cut out, a technical issue, I don't know. I locked myself in the bedroom all night. He's gone now, I think. I don't know what to do. She was quiet for a moment. I could hear her breathing on the other end, the sound of her own mind racing. Okay, honey, okay, listen to me. You're safe now. That's the important thing. It was probably just some druggie, looking for a quick score. They get spooked easily. You did the right thing by locking yourself away. He knew my name, Mom, I whispered. The world is a scary place, Leo. You're working too hard. So much stress. It's probably just a mistake. Maybe you have a package at the front desk? Maybe he got the wrong apartment? She was trying to build a world where this made sense. I let her. I needed to live in that world, just for a second. Her voice was calm, logical. It was everything I needed. I don't know, I mumbled, letting my head fall into my hands. Just breathe, honey. It will be okay, she said, her tone softening. I'll come down this weekend if you want. We'll get you some new locks. Maybe one of those camera doorbells? Yeah, I said, a sliver of hope rekindling. Yeah, okay. You just need to be more careful, she continued, her voice still a comforting balm. You've always been a little forgetful. You need to make sure you double-check things. You should check on your key ring, for instance. Make sure you didn't lose it again. I froze. My hand, holding the phone, grew cold. The blood drained from my face. What did you just say? I never had a key ring. I had a single, loose key for my apartment and a key fob for my car. I kept them separate. I'd never owned a key ring in my adult life. But more than that. The picture. The one he sent me of myself sleeping. In the corner of the photo, on my nightstand, was a jumble of keys. A key ring that wasn't mine. He must have left it there. A message. A warning. I had seen it. I had registered it. But in the panic, I had forgotten. I had never, ever told my mother about it. It wasn't possible for her to know. "Mom?" I asked, and my voice was a tiny, fragile thing, a child in the dark. How did you know about the keys?" The line was silent for a beat. The comforting warmth on the other end vanished. It was sucked out, replaced by a sudden sterile cold. Then she spoke again. And it wasn't her. The cadence was right, the pitch was almost right, but the humanness was gone. It was a digital echo, a synthesized performance, the same warped, artificial quality I had heard on the 911 call. "I know everything, Leo." I didn't scream. The sound was trapped in my throat, a solid block of ice. I ripped the phone away from my ear and stared at the cracked screen. "Backquote, Mom." Mobile backquote, it read. I hurled it across the room. It shattered against the far wall, the battery skittering across the hardwood floor. My lifeline. He had turned my own mother into a puppet. He was listening to everything. He knew everything. And then it started. From the smart speaker on my kitchen counter. Beep. "Just need the quarterly reports by 5, that's all I ask." It was my boss's voice. A snippet from a phone call I'd had 2 days ago. Cut off mid-sentence. Beep. "Yeah, a large pepperoni and mushroom. Apartment 5B. My voice. "From last week." Beep. "Shit!" Me, yesterday morning, when I stubbed my toe on the bed frame. Beep. A low, tuneless humming. The sound I make in the shower when I think no one is listening. It was my life. Sliced up. Diced. Reassembled into a sound collage from hell. Private moments, mundane complaints, secret whispers. All of it recorded. All of it weaponized. He hadn't just invaded my home. He had invaded my entire existence. He had peeled back my privacy like skin from a fruit. "Stop it!" I screamed at the impassive plastic cylinder. "Stop it!" I scrambled forward, grabbing the speaker, and ripped the power cord from the wall. The sound died. But it didn't matter. It was already inside my head. The recordings echoed in my skull. I clapped my hands over my ears, pressing hard, trying to crush the sound, trying to make it stop. My breath came in ragged, panicked bursts. I was cornered. There was nowhere to run, because the threat wasn't just in the apartment. It was in my past, in my memories. A new sound cut through my panic, a low electronic hiss. My head snapped up. The TV in the living room. It was on. The screen was a blizzard of black and white static. It hadn't been on a second ago. I hadn't turned it on. I never even used it. I watched, frozen in place as the static coalesced. It swirled and shifted, like iron filings drawn by a magnet. In the center of the chaotic screen, a single blocky letter appeared. Then another, and another. A cursor, blinking in the snowstorm, typing out a message just for me. YOURMOTHERSAYSHELLO. The letters hung there, burning in the static. An afterimage seared onto my retinas. My own television, a black rectangle I hadn't touched in months, was a vessel now, a mouthpiece. It was over. This wasn't a game I could win. This was an extermination. Get out. The thought was not mine. It was an instinct, a command from the oldest part of my brain, the part that only knows how to run and hide. The letters on the screen, YOURMOTHERSAYSHELLO, started to dissolve back into the digital snow, but it didn't matter. The message was delivered. My body moved before my mind caught up. I scrambled away from the television, my palms skidding on the hardwood floor. My backpack was by the door, still holding my laptop from work. I lunged for it, unzipping it with hands that felt like clumsy hooks. Laptop out. It hit the floor with a plastic crack. I didn't care. In went my wallet. In went the keys I'd dropped by the door. I looked around the room, a wild animal cornered in its own den. What else? What do you take when you're running for your life? Clothes? Food? Nothing mattered. Nothing but distance. He was in the wires. In the air. He could turn my own mother's voice against me. He could turn my own home into a screen for his threats. The apartment wasn't a shelter. It was the cage. I slung the backpack over my shoulder and yanked the front door open. The hallway was empty, lit by the weak, buzzing overhead lights. For a second, I looked toward the elevator bank at the end of the hall. A small, enclosed metal box. A trap. No. I turned and ran the other way, toward the heavy red door marked stairs. I hit the push bar with my shoulder and stumbled into the concrete well. The door slammed shut behind me, the sound echoing down the empty shaft. The air was cold, smelling of dust and faint decay. My feet hammered against the concrete steps. 10 floors to the ground. My lungs started to burn by the time I passed the 9th floor landing. The only sound was my own ragged breathing and the slap, slap, slap of my sneakers. It was a rhythm of escape. A drumbeat of panic. He's not here. He can't be here. The stairwell was solid. It was real. No screens. No speakers. Just concrete and steel. I let that thought fuel me. With every floor I passed, a tiny sliver of control returned. I was doing something. I was moving. I was getting away. I hit the 8th floor landing, my legs aching, and risked a glance out the narrow, wire-meshed window. It offered a vertical slice of the street below. Gray pavement, the tops of parked cars, the brick facade of the building across the way. And a figure. Down on the sidewalk, standing beside a black iron street lamp. A dark shape, perfectly still, too still. Everyone else on the street was in motion, a woman walking a dog, a guy on a bike. But this figure just stood there, across the street, looking up at my building. My stomach dropped. I stopped, my hand gripping the cold metal railing. It didn't feel like a coincidence. He looked patient, like a spider waiting in the corner of its web. Was he looking at my window? Or was he looking at this window? Could he see me? A shadow behind grimy, reinforced glass? My heart hammered against my ribs. It had to be him. It was the only thing that made sense in this nightmare logic. He wasn't just in my apartment. He was outside too. He was the watcher on the street. The ghost in the machine. He was everywhere at once. As I watched, frozen, the figure moved. It was a slow, deliberate motion. An arm rising. A small, dark rectangle in its hand. A phone. He lifted it, aiming it straight at the building. Straight at me. A pinpoint of light. Flash. It was tiny from this distance, but unmistakable. A camera flash. He took a picture. Of me. A ghost in a stairwell window. I flinched back from the glass, my breath catching in my throat. I didn't need to see the picture. I didn't need the notification. I knew. He saw me. The web was bigger than I thought. The cage wasn't just my apartment. It was the whole damn block. And then I heard it. From far above me. Right from the 10th floor. A faint electronic sound that cut through the concrete and steel. Beep, boop, boop, boop. The sound of my smart lock. My own apartment door. A sound I heard every day. But I was here. My key fob was in my backpack. There was no one up there. He had just unlocked my door. And locked it again. From the street. After taking my picture. It wasn't a threat. It was a demonstration. I see you running, Leo. And I can still get back into your nest whenever I want. No, I whispered, the word swallowed by the stairwell. I turned and fled. I didn't run anymore. I plummeted. I took the stairs 2, 3 at a time, half falling, catching myself on the railing. My backpack swung wildly, slamming into my spine. 7th floor. 6th. 5th. My only thought was the ground. Get to the ground. Get to the street. Get lost in the city. The world was a blur of gray concrete and peeling red paint on the railings. My lungs were on fire. My thighs screamed. I didn't care. The fear was a fuel that burned hotter than pain. 4th. 3rd. 2nd. I saw the final door, the one marked G. Ground. I didn't slow down. I aimed my body at it like a missile and smashed into the push bar. The door flew open and I spilled out into the building's sterile back lobby. A deafening alarm blared to life the second the door opened. Red lights flashed from the ceiling, strobing across the tiled floor, turning the mundane space into a disco from hell. The fire escape door. I had triggered the alarm. Hey! Freeze! Right there! A voice cut through the noise. I spun around. A man in a cheap navy blue security guard uniform was moving quickly toward me, one hand on a bulky black walkie-talkie on his belt. He was middle-aged, with a tired face and a gut that strained the buttons on his shirt. He looked more annoyed than aggressive. Hands where I can see them! On your head, he barked, his voice tight with practiced authority. My brain couldn't process it. Escape, alarm, guard, it was too much. No, you don't understand, I stammered, raising my hands automatically. My voice was a shredded mess, barely audible over the screaming alarm. I understand I got a fire alarm from the stairwell, and you came barreling out like the devil was on your tail, he said, stopping a few feet away. He sized me up. Wild eyes, sweat-soaked shirt, panicked heaving breaths. I looked guilty. I knew how I looked. Someone's in my apartment, I said, the words tumbling out in a rush. He's been watching me. He was just outside. He took my picture. He's controlling everything, the TV, the locks. The guard's face hardened. His expression shifted from suspicion to confirmed diagnosis. He thought I was high. Or crazy. Okay, buddy, let's just slow down. Apartment number? His tone was the one you use on a spooked horse. 10B, I gasped. Leo. My name is Leo. All right, Leo. He spoke into his radio, his eyes never leaving me. Dispatch. This is Franklin at the North Tower. Fire alarm on the ground floor stairwell. I got a resident here, claims a B&E in 10B. Looks like a false alarm, possible 10 to 96. Stand by. He clicked off. 10 to 96. Mental subject. I'm not crazy, I insisted, my voice cracking with desperation. He had to believe me. Someone had to. He was in there. He talked to me through my mom's phone. Please, you have to believe me. Franklin just sighed. It was the sound of a man who had heard 1,000 crazy stories and was just trying to get to the end of his shift. I believe you're freaked out, son. Let's do this. I'll turn this racket off. Then you and I are going to take a little ride up to the 10th floor and look at your apartment. If it's unlocked, we call the cops. If it's locked and everything's fine, you go inside and sleep it off. Deal? It was a test. A placation. He didn't believe a word. But it was my only option. Deal, I said, my shoulders slumping. Yes, thank you. He grunted, walked over to a panel on the wall, and punched in a code. The ungodly siren cut off abruptly. The silence that rushed in was just as loud. It was heavy, accusatory. All right, Franklin said, jerking his head toward the elevators. Let's go see the ghost. The ride up in the elevator was the longest minute of my life. I was going back into the box, back up to the cage. Franklin stood with his arms crossed, watching the floor numbers light up. He didn't look at me. I could feel his skepticism radiating off him in waves. I stared at my own reflection in the polished steel doors. I looked like a wreck. He was right to not believe me. The elevator dinged at the 10th floor. The doors slid open. The hallway was exactly as I had left it. Quiet. Empty. We walked down the carpeted hall, my feet suddenly heavy. Franklin walked with a sense of weary purpose. We stopped in front of 10B. My door. He reached out and tried the handle. It was locked. Solid. He looked at me, raising an eyebrow. Lock tight, kid. He unlocked it from the street, I said, my voice low. He must have locked it again. He's playing with me. Franklin let out another long-suffering sigh. He was done. This was the end of his little field trip. Look, son, there's no sign of forced entry. The door's locked. You probably just had a nightmare. The window, I blurted, a last, desperate idea. From the hallway. You can see into my living room from the window over there. I pointed across the hall to the large window that looked out over the central atrium. From the right angle, it gave a clear view into my own apartment's living room window. He looked like he wanted to argue, but then he just shook his head, a glimmer of pity in his eyes. He probably had kids. He probably just wanted to go home. Fine, one last look, then you go to bed. He walked across the hall, his boots silent on the carpet. I followed, my heart pounding a sick rhythm against my ribs. He stood at the atrium window, cupping his hands around his face to block the glare from the hallway lights. I stood beside him, afraid of what we would, or wouldn't, see. See? He started to say. Nothing. The TV is off. Everything looks. He stopped. He pulled out his heavy-duty flashlight, the kind that could stun a man. He clicked it on. A powerful, focused beam of white light shot across the 10-foot gap and hit my living room window. It slid across the clean, dark glass, and then it landed on the handprint. It was low on the pane, near the bottom corner. It was a perfect, greasy print. Each finger was distinct, the whorls of the palm smeared and clear. It was filthy, like the hand had been dipped in oil and grime, and it was on the inside of the glass. Franklin didn't say anything. He didn't move. He just stood there, the flashlight beam fixed on the print. The air in the hallway went cold. The cheap navy blue uniform didn't make him look like an authority figure anymore. He just looked like a man, staring at something that shouldn't be there. His professional calm had evaporated, replaced by a still, sharp-edged tension. He slowly turned his head and looked at me. The skepticism in his eyes was gone. In its place was something new, something I recognized. It was fear. Franklin's flashlight beam did not waver. It was a pillar of white light holding that single, greasy handprint in place. He swallowed. I heard the click in his throat from 2 feet away. The sound was loud in the dead air of the hallway. He didn't pull the light away. He didn't say a word. He just stared, and in the reflection on the glass I saw his jaw muscles clenching. Finally, he lowered the flashlight. He turned to me, his face a new kind of mask. The tired annoyance was gone. The professional detachment was gone. Now it was just tight. His eyes, which had looked at me with pity and suspicion, now looked at me with a shared horror. He believed me. Okay, he whispered, the word sharp. He fumbled for his radio, his hand not quite steady. Dispatch, this is Franklin North Tower. That 10-96 is a legit 10-31. Apartment 10B. I need a unit here. Now. Burglary in progress. His voice had lost its bored drawl. It was clipped, urgent. The cops came. 2 of them. A younger guy and a woman who looked like she'd seen everything and was impressed by none of it. Franklin explained the situation in low, quick tones. The TV, the text, the locked door, the man on the street, the handprint. I just stood there, leaning against the wall, feeling my legs tremble. I was a spectator to my own nightmare. They took a statement. They used a master key card to open my door. The 3 of them went in, guns drawn. I waited in the hall with Franklin. It felt like an hour. When they emerged, the woman, Officer Diaz, had her notebook out. Sir, she said, her voice flat. There's no one in the apartment. The handprint, I croaked. We saw it, the younger cop said. Could be old, could have been a maintenance worker. You had your AC serviced recently? No, I said. It wasn't there this morning. He put it there, while I was in the stairwell. Diaz just wrote something down. Okay. We've searched the premises. There's no sign of forced entry. Nothing appears to be stolen or disturbed. The television is off. The place is clean. He controls the tech, I insisted, hearing the desperation creep back into my voice. He can turn it on and off. He can lock and unlock the door. He was just proving he could. She gave me a long, patient look, the kind of look a doctor gives you before delivering bad news. Leo, have you been under a lot of stress lately? Any recent changes in medication? Is there anyone we can call for you? Family? My own mother's voice filtered through his hate. That's who they wanted me to call. My blood ran cold. No, I'm not crazy. That print is on the inside. "We'll have forensics dust it anyway," she said, closing her notebook. It was a dismissal, a final act. But honestly, son, there's nothing for us to do here. No crime has been committed. My advice? Get some sleep. Maybe talk to a professional. If anything else happens, anything concrete, you give us a call. They left. Franklin gave me a helpless shrug and retreated to his lobby downstairs. I was alone in the hallway again, staring at my open apartment door. The cops had left the lights on inside. It looked normal. It looked safe. But it wasn't. It was compromised. It was a stage, and he was the director. I couldn't stay there. I couldn't even step inside. I pulled out my phone, my thumb shaking as I scrolled to the contacts. There was only one person. Alex. He picked up on the second ring. "Leo? What's up, man? It's like 1 a.m. "Alex, I need help," I said, the words a single, rushed breath. "I can't stay in my apartment. Can I come over, please?" There was a pause. "Whoa, slow down. What happened? Are you okay?" "I'll explain when I get there. I can't be here." "Yeah, man, of course. Come on over," he said, his voice instantly shifting from sleepy to concerned. "The door's unlocked." The casual words sent a fresh spike of fear through me. An unlocked door wasn't a welcome. It was a vulnerability. Alex's apartment was a 20-minute drive I barely remember. I just focused on the taillights in front of me, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. His place was on the 3rd floor of an old brick walk-up, the kind with creaky wooden stairs and the smell of 100 old meals cooked into the walls. It felt real. It felt solid. No smart locks. No central network. Just wood and brick and metal keys. I found his door and pushed it open. He was on the couch, wearing sweatpants and a faded college t-shirt, his glasses perched on his head. The TV was on, playing some nature documentary on low volume. "Jesus, Leo, you look like you've seen a ghost," he said, sitting up. I told him everything. From the first flickers on the TV to the texts from my mother's number, the figure on the street, the camera flash, the smart lock, the handprint, the cops. I paced his small living room as I talked, the words spilling out of me. Alex listened patiently, his expression shifting from concern to confusion to a kind of careful sympathy. He got me a glass of water. He let me finish. "Dude," he said softly when I finally ran out of words. "That is intense. That's some serious shit." He ran a hand through his messy hair. "But listen to it, man. It sounds like the most epic, fucked up prank ever. And I'm just saying this because I'm your friend. You've been working like a dog. You're burned out. The mind can do weird things when it's stressed." "It wasn't a prank, Alex. It wasn't stress. It was real. The security guard saw it. He was scared." Okay, he said, holding up his hands. "I'm not saying you're making it up. I'm just saying maybe there's a rational explanation we're not seeing." He was trying to help. He was trying to anchor me to reality. But my reality was a sinkhole, and I was dragging him toward the edge. "Just for tonight, Alex. I just need to not be there." "Of course, man. Take the couch. It's not great, but it's better than a haunted apartment." He forced a small smile. "Try and get some sleep. Everything looks different in the morning." He went back to his bedroom and closed the door. I was left alone in the dim light of the TV. The sounds from the documentary, chirping birds, a narrator's soft voice, were a thin blanket over the silence. I sank onto the sofa. It was old, a little lumpy, but it was solid under me. This place was safe. It had to be. I was miles away from my apartment. He couldn't be here. I killed the TV with the remote, plunging the room into near darkness, lit only by the faint orange glow of a street lamp outside the window. I lay back, my backpack on the floor beside me. I closed my eyes, but all I saw was the greasy handprint on the glass. I forced my breathing to slow down. In. Out. This is Alex's place. You are safe. The mantra was weak, pathetic. My phone, which I'd placed on the cushion next to my head, vibrated. My eyes snapped open. I didn't want to look. My heart started that sick, heavy thudding again. It was a drumbeat I was getting to know. Slowly, I reached for it. The screen lit up my face in the dark room. A new message. An unknown number. My thumb trembled as I tapped the notification. "Your friend has a nice sofa." The air left my lungs in a silent gasp. Time stopped. The street lamp outside, the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, Alex's soft snoring from the other room, it all faded away. There was only me, the glowing screen, and those 7 words. He knew. He knew where I was. He wasn't in my apartment. He wasn't a ghost tied to a place. He was attached to me. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My throat was clamped shut. I shot up into a sitting position, my eyes darting frantically around the dark living room. The window. The front door. The shadows in the corners that suddenly seemed deeper, darker. Was he outside? Looking in right now? How could he possibly know? I didn't tell anyone but Alex. I drove straight here. My mind raced, searching for a rational explanation. A bug on my phone? GPS tracking had he followed me? But the streets were empty. I would have noticed. It was impossible. And that impossibility was the most terrifying part. Alex, I choked out, a raw whisper. Alex! I scrambled off the couch, stumbling toward his bedroom door. I didn't knock. I threw it open. He bolted upright in his bed, blinking in the sudden light from the living room. What? Leo! What the hell? I shoved my phone into his face. Read it! He squinted, his eyes adjusting. He read the message. I watched his face change. The confusion melted into a sharp, sudden intake of breath. The color drained from his cheeks. What is this? He whispered. It came through 30 seconds ago. How, Alex? How does he know I'm here? How does he know I'm on your sofa? Fear, real and visceral, flashed in his eyes. For a second, we were united in it. He threw his legs out of bed. Okay, stay here. He moved past me, his bare feet silent on the wood floor. I watched him go to his front door, his hand reaching out to check the deadbolt. He twisted it. Locked. He went to the window in the living room, peering through the blinds. He checked the fire escape window in the kitchen. Everything's locked tight, he said, his back to me. His voice was strained. He turned around slowly. The fear was still in his eyes, but it was being pushed aside by something else, something colder. Suspicion. Leo, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. Did you tell absolutely anyone else you were coming here? No, of course not. Just you. You didn't text anyone? Post anything? What? No. Alex, what are you saying? His eyes searched mine, and what I saw in them was worse than the text message. He was looking for the lie. He was looking for the hole in my story. The rational explanation wasn't an external monster anymore. The rational explanation was me. This is crazy, he muttered, more to himself than to me. This doesn't just happen. He started pacing, the same way I had an hour before. Someone has to be fucking with us. You must have told someone. Or maybe you sent this to yourself? The accusation hung in the air between us, ugly and sharp. You think I'm doing this? Why? Why the hell would I do this? I don't know, he shot back, his fear turning to frustration. A cry for help? A psychotic break? I don't know, man, but a ghost texting you about my couch makes a lot less sense than you needing a doctor. My last anchor wasn't just slipping away. It was actively pushing me under. The room felt small, suffocating. I was trapped here with someone who thought I was the monster. Bloop, 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 bloop. We both froze. The sound was sharp, electronic. It came from the bookshelf next to the TV. Alex's Bluetooth speaker. A small, black cylinder. A blue light on it was flashing. Connecting. Then, a voice came out of the speaker. My voice. It wasn't a prank, Alex. It wasn't stress. It was real. The security guard saw it. He was scared. It was a recording. A recording of what I had said to him not 10 minutes ago. We stared at the speaker, horrified. Then, Alex's voice came through. But it wasn't his voice. It was warped. Pitched down. A slow, demonic growl that vibrated through the floorboards. Okay. I'm not saying you're making it up. Alex's face was a sheet of white. The suspicion, the anger, all of it vanished, replaced by a primal terror that mirrored my own. He believed now. Oh, God, he believed. It was listening. It was here, in the room with us, in the airwaves, and it was playing with its food. Bang, bang, bang. The sound was so loud it shook the floor. An impossibly heavy fist hammering on the front door. We both jumped, spinning to face the entrance. We didn't breathe. The speaker fell silent. The only sound was the frantic pounding. It was trying to get in. Bang, bang, bang. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The silence that followed was absolute. Heavy. Alex and I stood frozen in the middle of his living room. Our eyes locked on the door. My heart hammered against my ribs, a wild bird in a cage. The silence stretched. 1 second. 2. 5. Then a new sound began, a sound that made the hair on my arm stand up. Scrape. Scratch. S-C-R-R-R-R-I-I-I-I-I-I-I-I-I-I-I-T-C-H. It was the sound of something sharp. A knife. Digging into the outside of the door, gouging the wood. It was a hateful, deliberate sound. A sound of violation. And then, nothing. It was over. We waited, listening to a silence that felt louder than the noise it replaced. Minutes crawled by. Neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. Finally, Alex let out a shaky breath. He took a single, hesitant step toward the door. Then, another. I stayed put, unable to move, unable to look away. He reached the door, his body trembling. He leaned forward, putting his eye to the peephole. He was there for a long time. Nothing, he whispered, his voice a ghost. There's no one there. His hand, shaking violently, reached for the deadbolt. Alex, don't, I warned. He ignored me. He needed to see. He turned the lock. The click echoed like a gunshot in the small apartment. He pulled the door inward, just a crack at first, then all the way. The hallway was empty. The dim, yellow light showed nothing but a worn runner carpet and the closed doors of his neighbors. No one was there. See? Alex said, a tremor of relief in his voice. Gone. Then he looked down at the door itself. His breath hitched. I crept forward, my legs like lead, and looked at what he was seeing. There, on the outside of his door, carved deep into the painted wood, were fresh, splintered marks. A crude, hurried carving. It wasn't a word. It wasn't random scratches. It was a symbol. An eye. And it was staring right at us. Alex slammed the door shut. The heavy thud was followed by the metallic thwack of the deadbolt. He leaned his back against the wood, his chest rising and falling fast. The carved eye was on the other side, staring. We stood there in the silence, listening to each other breathe. The air was thick. The apartment wasn't a sanctuary anymore. It was just a different box. A different trap. It knows, I said. The words were flat. A statement of fact. It knows we're in here. Alex didn't answer. He just slid down the door until he was sitting on the floor, his head in his hands. The take-charge attitude was gone. The suspicion was gone. All that was left was the same raw fear that was eating me from the inside out. This isn't a person, Leo, he finally mumbled into his palms. This is not a person. No, I agreed, it's not. We had to do something. Hiding wasn't working. The thing wasn't tied to my apartment. It was tied to me. And now it was here, with us. We needed answers. We needed a starting point. Any starting point. The texts, Alex said, looking up, his eyes suddenly sharp. The speaker. The recordings. It's digital. It's using the network. That's a footprint. It has to be. He scrambled to his feet and went to the small desk in the corner where his laptop sat. He flipped it open. The screen cast a pale blue light on his face. His fingers flew across the keyboard. He was in his element now. Codes and command lines were his world. A world with rules. A world that was supposed to make sense. Okay, he muttered, pulling up a black screen with green text. The unknown number that texted you. Give me your phone. I handed it to him. He plugged it into his laptop. He typed, his knuckles white. I watched the lines of code scroll past, meaningless to me. It felt useless, like trying to catch smoke with a net. It's masked, he said after a few minutes, his voice tight with frustration. Rerouted through a dozen dead-end proxies. It's not just a burner phone. It's professional. Military-grade cloaking. This is impossible. It's like the number doesn't exist. He leaned back, shaking his head. And the speaker, it connected through a localized Bluetooth signal. No IP address to trace. It was just there. In the room. Of course it was. Rules didn't apply. Logic didn't apply. My mind raced, grabbing at fragments. The TV. The lock. The handprint. The street. The texts. The banging. The eye. It was a storm of disconnected horror, but there had to be a beginning. There had to be a moment before all this. When did the volume get turned up? Sorgisk. Then I remembered. A small thing. A stupid thing. Something I'd barely thought about. The mirror, I said. Alex looked up from his screen. What mirror? I bought a mirror. A few weeks ago. An old one. For the entryway. My own voice sounded distant. I was a man describing a dream. Things were weird before. Little things. But after I brought it home, that's when the TV started. That's when it got loud. Alex stared at me. An antique? I nodded. Some weird little shop downtown. Curiosities. He didn't say anything. He just turned back to his laptop. He closed the command prompt. He opened a browser. His fingers tapped on the keyboard again, this time much slower. CURIODDITIES The search results loaded. A few business listings, some Yelp reviews calling it creepy but cool. Then Alex's cursor froze on a link further down the page. It was a local news archive. The headline was from 6 months ago. Downtown shop owner found dead in apparent suicide. A cold feeling trickled down my spine. Alex clicked the link. The article was short, dry. It detailed the discovery of the body of one Elias Klein, age 72, owner of Curiosities. He had hanged himself from a beam in the back room of his shop. No note was found. The final paragraph was what made my blood run cold. Police officials state that in the months leading up to his death, Mr. Klein was the subject of several welfare checks called in by concerned neighbors. In the weeks following, several customers of Curiosities filed informal complaints, citing, quote, unsettling experiences and extreme paranoia after bringing items from the store into their homes. Authorities found no basis for a formal investigation. Unsettling experiences, Alex read aloud, his voice barely a whisper. Leo. He kept digging. He added new words to the search bar. Curiosities. Haunted. Paranormal. And then we found it. A link to a forum. An old one, with a plain, outdated design. It was called The Static. The banner was a mess of TV snow. The tagline below it read, You're not crazy. You're not alone. Talk to us. It was a support group for the customers of Curiosities. We scrolled through the posts. My heart hammered against my ribs. A user named Watcher_82 wrote, It started with a grandfather clock I bought there. It doesn't even work. But sometimes I hear it tick. At 3 a.m. every night. Last night I swore I saw a man's reflection in the glass face. But when I turned on the light, there was no one there. Just the clock. And me. Am I losing my mind? Another one, from Sarah_K. My daughter won't go near the music box I got for her. She says the music box man whispers to her when she tries to sleep. She says he tells her secrets about me. Things she couldn't possibly know. Things I've never told anyone. The posts went on, dozens of them. A woman who bought a painting and now saw a face in her window every night. A man who bought a rocking chair that moved on its own. They were all different items, but the stories were the same. The feeling was the same. A presence, tied to an object. An intrusion. And then we saw the post that made me stop breathing. It was from a user named glass_man. Underscore is underscore real. Posted 3 weeks ago. Don't buy the mirrors. Whatever you do, don't buy the mirrors. He lives in them. I see him, just a shape, at first. At the edge of my vision when I'm shaving. But now he's clearer, he just stands there. In the reflection. Behind me. He doesn't do anything. He just watches. I covered the mirror, but I can still feel him watching. He texted me yesterday. From my dead wife's number. He knew I was going to the police. He told me not to. He sees everything. I'm getting rid of it. I'm smashing it tonight. It was the last post he ever made. Jesus Christ, Alex breathed, pushing his chair back from the desk. Leo, this is it. This is really it. It's the mirror. The world had shrunk. It was no longer the vast, infinite space of the internet or the city. It was the 4 walls of my apartment. It was a single object. A gateway. The confirmation didn't bring relief. It brought a new kind of terror. A specific, focused terror. We weren't fighting a hacker or a stalker. We were fighting a ghost. A dirty, malevolent thing stuck to a piece of glass. Click. The sound was tiny, but in the dead silence of the room, it was like a firecracker. We both froze. The sound had come from the desk. From Alex's laptop. A small, blue light next to the built-in webcam was now on. It hadn't been on a second ago. Before we could react, the browser window with the forum on it vanished. The screen went black for a second, then flickered back to life. It was a live video feed. From the laptop's own camera. It was us. Right now. I could see myself, my face pale, my eyes wide. I could see Alex, frozen halfway out of his chair. We were staring at the screen, and the screen was staring back at us. A perfect, closed loop of fear. What the? Alex started to say. But the feed changed. It cut abruptly. The image of us was gone. Replaced by a new one. The image was grainy, shot from a low angle. I recognized it instantly. It was my living room. From the camera on my TV, the one I had taped over. But the tape was gone. The room was empty, silent. The camera panned slowly, mechanically, across the space. Past the sofa. Past the entryway. Then it stopped. It zoomed in. On the mirror. The tall, antique mirror hanging on the wall. We were watching a live stream of an empty room, focused on an empty mirror. My stomach twisted. We were miles away, but we were looking right into the heart of it. Turn it off, I said, my voice a croak. Alex, kill it. Alex's hand moved toward the power button, but he stopped. We were both transfixed, staring at the reflection in the mirror on the screen. It showed the opposite wall of my apartment. The blank, white wall. Nothing happened. For a long, stretched-out moment, it was just a static-pocked image of an empty reflection. Maybe it was over. Maybe it was just a final, technical glitch to scare us. Then the reflection changed. It was subtle at first, a flicker, a distortion in the air, like heat haze on a summer road. A spot in the center of the mirror's reflection grew dark, not a shadow cast from the room, but a darkness blooming from within the glass itself. A spreading ink stain. The stain coalesced, took shape. It was a silhouette, tall, thin, a man. It was standing in my living room. In the reflection. It was the shape from the street. There, I whispered. That's him. Alex made a choked sound. He couldn't look away. The figure in the mirror was perfectly still, its back to the camera. A dark cutout against the reflection of the white wall. It just stood there, a silent trespasser in my home, being broadcast to us from across the city. This was its show, its performance. And it had 2 captive audience members. Then, slowly, it began to turn. Not its body, just its head. A slow, deliberate rotation. The dark shape of its head turned to face the camera. To face us. The image was grainy. The lighting was poor. But there was no mistaking it. Even through the digital snow. Even through the distorted glass. The figure in the mirror raised its head. And in the single, heart-stopping moment before the screen went black and Alex's laptop died completely, I saw its face. It was my face. The laptop screen was a black mirror. It reflected nothing. The power was gone. The image was gone. But it was still there, burned onto the back of my eyelids. My face, staring from inside my own home. The silence that followed was worse than any noise. It was a physical thing, pressing in on us. Alex was on the floor, his hands flat on the useless keyboard, his shoulders shaking. He wasn't typing, he was just trying to hold himself steady. "No," he said. The word was a puff of air. "No, that's not possible." But it was. We had seen it. The ghost in the machine was me. My mind was a scramble of electric noise, a digital feed, a reflection. My face. It wasn't a ghost in a mirror. It was a copy, a broadcast. What the hell was it? "We have to destroy it," I said. The words came out clear, cold. There was no other thought in my head. All the theories, all the digital footprints, all of it, was meaningless now. There was a cancer in my apartment, and there was only one way to cut it out. We have to go back and smash that goddamn thing to pieces. Alex looked up at me, his face pale in the gloom of his apartment. The tech guy was gone. The logical analyst was gone. All that was left was my friend, looking at me like I just read his mind. Fear can do that. It strips away all the bullshit and leaves you with 1 or 2 simple, hard truths. He nodded, a sharp, jerky movement. Okay. The drive back across town was a blur of streetlights and silence. Every car that passed felt like it was watching us. Every dark window held a potential face. The city wasn't a city anymore. It was a hunting ground. Alex drove, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. I stared out the passenger window, my own reflection, a pale ghost against the passing lights. I flinched every time I caught it in my peripheral vision. We pulled into the parking garage beneath my building. The concrete pillars felt like teeth. The hum of the fluorescent lights was the only sound. It felt wrong. Everything felt wrong. We walked toward the glass doors of the lobby. A figure moved behind the front desk. It was Frank, the night guard. A portly man in his late 50s who was usually half asleep with a pulp paperback open in front of him. Tonight, he was wide awake. He saw us approach and stood up, holding a hand up. "Leo," he said. His voice was too loud in the quiet lobby. "Hold on a minute." My heart hammered against my ribs. "What is it, Frank?" He looked from me to Alex, his brow furrowed. "Your brother came by last night." The words didn't compute. They were just sounds. I stared at him. "My what?" "Your brother," Frank repeated, slower this time, like I was the one who was confused. "Tall guy. Looked a bit like you, but skinny. Said you weren't feeling well, he was coming to look after you. Wanted me to let him up." A cold feeling, colder than any I'd felt so far, started in my gut and spread through my chest. My voice was a croak. "What did you tell him?" "Told him no way," Frank said, puffing his chest out a bit, proud of his diligence. "You never put him on the approved visitor list." "I told him he'd have to call you, that I couldn't let anyone up without you buzzing them and yourself." He got weird. Didn't argue, just stared at me for a long time. Then he left. Alex grabbed my arm. His grip was tight. "Leo," he whispered. I shook my head, trying to clear it, trying to make sense of the new data. The ghost, the mirror, and now this. A man, a real man. At my front door. "I don't have a brother," I said to Frank. Frank's face fell. The pride vanished, replaced by a dawning unease. Oh. We left him standing there. The elevator ride up was the longest 60 seconds of my life. The little bell that chimed at each floor was like a gunshot. The walls felt like they were shrinking. Was it a ghost that could look like me? Or was it a man who had put a camera in my TV? My brain couldn't hold both thoughts at once. They fought each other. A screeching chaos of impossibility. The twist. The source was wrong. We thought it was A, but maybe it was B. The elevator doors slid open onto my floor. The hallway was empty. The air was still. We walked toward my apartment, 12B. Our footsteps echoed on the tile. I could see the door from 20 feet away, and I could see the sliver of black where the door wasn't flush with the frame. "It's open," Alex breathed. It wasn't just unlocked. It was ajar. A single, dark invitation. Someone had been here. Or something was still here. My hand, reaching for the doorknob, was shaking. I pushed it. The door swung inward without a sound. The place had been tossed, but not like in the movies. It wasn't a violent whirlwind of destruction. It was methodical, clean. The couch cushions were on the floor, neatly placed. The books had been taken from the shelves and stacked on the coffee table. My mail was opened, the letters fanned out like a poker hand. This wasn't a robbery. This was a search. An invasion. What the hell? Alex stepped inside, turning in a slow circle. My eyes went straight to the entryway wall, to the spot where the mirror should be. It was still there. Untouched. A tall, dark rectangle hanging in the chaos, perfectly calm. We moved through the apartment like soldiers in a minefield, one slow step at a time. Every shadow was a threat. Every creak of the floorboards was an attack. We cleared the small kitchen. Empty. The bathroom. Empty. That left the living room and the bedroom. We stepped into the living room. And we froze. There was something standing in front of the mirror. It was a mannequin, the kind you see in department store windows. Blank, featureless, and pale. It was dressed in my clothes. My favorite gray hoodie. The jeans I wore yesterday. And taped to its smooth plastic face was a photograph. A glossy 8x10 print. It was a picture of me, smiling. The picture from my company ID badge. It was a sculpture. A statement. It was a mockery of me, positioned to stare into the mirror, into its own dark gateway. I felt a surge of nausea. Who would do this? What kind of person? Crack! The sound was sharp and final. It came from the bedroom, from behind us. It was the sound of a closet door thrown open with violent force. I spun around, just as a figure burst out of the darkness of my bedroom closet. A blur of motion. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't a shadow. It was solid. It was a person, dressed head to toe in black, a black ski mask covering their face. And they were moving fast. "Alex!" I yelled. But it was too late. The figure slammed into Alex, a linebacker's tackle. Alex grunted, a sharp exhalation of breath, and went down hard. They both hit the floor in a tangle of limbs. The attacker was on top, one hand going for Alex's throat. My mind went blank. There was no thought, no plan, just pure animal instinct. My eyes darted around the room, looking for a weapon. My gaze landed on the heavy glass base of a floor lamp next to the sofa. Without a second of hesitation, I lunged, ripped the lamp from the wall, and swung the heavy base like a club. I aimed for the masked head. The glass base connected with the attacker's shoulder with a sickening thud. The person screamed, a high, thin sound of pain, and rolled off Alex, clutching their arm. Alex scrambled away, gasping for air. The attacker was on the floor, stunned, breathing in ragged pants. The ski mask was still in place. It was a person, a real flesh-and-blood person who had been in my closet, who had dressed a mannequin in my clothes. The impossible, supernatural horror of the mirror was suddenly gone, replaced by a brutal physical reality. I stood over them, the broken lamp held high, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. "Who the hell are you?" I screamed, my voice cracking. The figure didn't answer. They just lay there, whimpering. And then I saw it. Something had fallen from the pocket of the attacker's black jacket during the struggle. It lay on the hardwood floor, just a few feet away. A smartphone. The screen was lit up. It had landed face up. I lowered the lamp, my eyes locked on that small rectangle of light. I took a step closer. Alex saw it too, his breathing still ragged. The screen wasn't on the home menu. It was on an open application. The layout was simple. A dark background with a series of clean, white icons. An icon that looked like a television. An icon that looked like a speaker. An icon that looked like a light bulb. An icon that looked like a door lock. And at the top of the screen, in crisp, clear letters, was the name of the connected network. Leo-APT12B_smart home. The light from the phone screen was the only truth in the room. It was stark and clean and digital. It cut through the mess, the fear, the adrenaline. An app. A control panel for my life. My breath was a blade in my throat. Alex was on the floor, propped up on his elbows, staring at the same glowing rectangle. The whimpering from the masked figure was the only sound. "My belt," Alex rasped, his eyes never leaving the phone. "Get my belt." The thought took a second to connect, then it snapped into place. I moved. I didn't think. I yanked Alex's leather belt from his jeans. The attacker on the floor tried to scramble backward, dragging his injured shoulder. It was a pathetic motion. I dropped onto his back, my knee pressing between his shoulder blades. He let out a choked cry. I ignored it. I cinched the belt tight around his wrists, pulling until my knuckles were white. He struggled, a weak, frantic bucking, but the fight was gone from him. "The lamp cord," I grunted. Alex scrambled over, ripped the cord from the broken lamp base, and we bound the man's ankles. He was trussed up, a pathetic bundle of black cloth and quiet sobs on my living room floor. He was real. He was bleeding. He was just a man. The relief that came with that thought was a lie, and I knew it. But I let it wash over me for a second. "I'm calling 911, Alex said, already fumbling for his own phone. His hands were shaking badly. I watched as he stabbed at the screen, put it to his ear, and turned away, his voice a low, urgent murmur. I looked down at the man on the floor, at the black ski mask. I needed to see. The mannequin with my face, the man at the front desk who looked like me. I had to see the face of the person who was actually here. My hand, slick with sweat, reached down. I grabbed the bottom of the mask. The fabric was damp. I ripped it off. I was expecting a monster. A scarred villain from a movie. A face twisted by hate. I saw nothing. He was just a guy. Maybe 25. Pale skin. A spray of acne across his forehead. His eyes were wide, blue, and empty. They weren't looking at me. They were looking past me, at the ceiling. A thin line of drool trickled from the corner of his mouth. He started mumbling. Not to me, to the room. To the air. Signal lost. The feed is cut. Can't see. His voice was thin, reedy. The voice of a kid who spent too much time online. "Who sent you?" I demanded, grabbing the front of his jacket. I shook him. His head lolled on his neck. "Who the hell are you?" "Reboot required," he whispered, his eyes fluttering. "System failure. Reboot. Reboot." He was gone. A fried circuit board. Whatever was in his head had shorted out. Alex finished his call. "They're on their way." 10 minutes, maybe. He came to kneel beside me, looking at the blank face of our captive. "What the hell is wrong with him?" "He's broken," I said. My gaze fell back to the phone on the floor. The attacker's phone. The master key. I left the babbling wreck and went to it. This was the real answer. I went through his pockets. They were empty, except for a wallet. I flipped it open. There was no money. A driver's license. His name was Kevin Miller. An address across the state. A face that matched the one on the floor, only younger, smiling awkwardly in his DMV photo. He looked like an IT tech. Nobody. Then I saw the other cards. Tucked behind the license, one was a membership card. It was made of black metal, the letters etched in silver. It just said, "The Panopticon Club." Beneath the name was a simple logo, a stylized eye inside a circle. The other thing was a photograph, tucked into a sleeve. It was folded in half. I pulled it out. My blood went cold. It was a group picture, maybe 15 or 20 people. They were standing in what looked like a warehouse, and every single one of them was dressed in the same black tactical gear, the same black ski mask as the man on my floor. Identical, faceless soldiers. One of them, in the center, was holding a phone up, taking the selfie. They were a team, An army. This wasn't a random break-in. This was an operation. "Alex?" I said. My voice was low. I held out the photo. He took it. His jaw went slack. "Oh my God." He looked from the photo to the man on the floor. "This guy, he's just one of them." The circle of my apartment, which had felt like a breached fortress minutes ago, now felt like a cage. The city outside wasn't a city. It was a space full of them, full of masked faces. How many? Where were they? Pi. "The phone," Alex said, his mind kicking back into gear. He snatched up the attacker's phone. "The app is still open. But maybe there's more. A call log. A contact." He swiped out of the app. The background was just a plain black screen. He found the call log. It was a long list. Dozens of calls. All to the same number. Over and over. Today, yesterday, the day before. The contact name was one word. Controller. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was a sound I could feel in my teeth. A puppet. And a puppeteer. As we stared at the screen, it lit up. The word appeared in the center of the screen, bright and terrible. Incoming call. Controller. The phone began to ring. It was a shrill, digital chime that cut through the silence like a drill. We both flinched back from it as if it were a snake. Alex dropped it on the coffee table. It lay there, buzzing and screaming at us. "Don't," I whispered. "Don't answer it." The man on the floor, Kevin, stopped his mumbling. His head turned toward the sound of the ringing phone. A flicker of something appeared in his eyes. Recognition. "The signal," he breathed. The ringing was relentless. An assault. Alex stared at it, his face a mask of indecision and terror. He looked at me, his eyes wide. He was asking permission. I shook my head, a tiny, frantic motion. "No, don't let it in." But we were past that. It was already in. It was in my walls, in my lights, in the pocket of the man on my floor. With a trembling hand, Alex reached out. His finger hovered over the green icon. He looked at me one last time, then back at the phone. He swiped. He put the call on speaker. Silence. A dead, empty hiss. For 3 long seconds, nothing happened. Then, a voice came out of the small speaker. It was not human. It was a buzz. A digital rasp, scraped clean of all inflection and tone by a voice changer. Act 1 is complete. The words hung in the air, cold and sharp. Alex and I were frozen, 2 statues staring at the source of the sound. "We have confirmed payload delivery," the voice continued, a metallic drawl. "But it seems our agent has encountered user error." It knew. It knew he had been caught. Was it watching us? Right now? Through the black eye of my television screen? Through the camera on my laptop? "A messy performance," the voice rasped. "But it doesn't matter. You think there was only one pawn on the board, Leo?" It said my name. A machine said my name. "You think this ends with one broken soldier?" The voice was flat, but I could feel the amusement behind it. A cold, distant amusement. "That's not how the game is played. Look out your door." The command was absolute. My body moved before my brain could protest. I was on my feet, walking toward the entryway. Alex hissed my name, but I didn't stop. The phone on the table was silent now. The voice had given its order. I reached the front door. My hand trembled as I reached for the peephole. I didn't want to look. I had to look. I pressed my eye to the cool metal. The fisheye lens showed the hallway outside. The bland beige walls, the ugly carpet, and, at the far end, by the elevators, a figure. It was standing perfectly still, a black shape against the wall, dressed in the same clothes, wearing the same mask. Its head was turned, staring directly down the hall, staring directly at my door, at the peephole, at me. It wasn't moving. It wasn't approaching. It was just there, a sentinel, a placeholder for a horror yet to come. The first one was an invader. This one was a jailer. They weren't trying to get in anymore. They were waiting for me to come out. I stumbled back from the door, a gasp punched out of my lungs. My back hit the wall. I slid down it, my legs giving out. Leo, what is it? What did you see? Alex was at my side, his face pale. I couldn't speak. I could only shake my head. And then, from the middle of the living room, a new sound began. It started low, a guttural chuckle. The sound grew, gaining strength, turning into a full, heaving laugh. It was a wild, broken sound, utterly insane. It was the man on the floor, Kevin. He was arching his back, straining against his bonds, his face turned toward the ceiling, laughing and laughing. Tears streamed from his wide, empty eyes. I stared at him, at this cackling, defeated man. He stopped laughing as abruptly as he started. He rolled his head on the floor until his gaze locked with mine. The emptiness was gone. For the first time, I saw a person in there, a person looking right at me. And he smiled, a clear, lucid, terrible smile. He spoke, his voice no longer a mumble. It was sharp and clear, and it echoed in the sudden quiet of the room. You're the chosen one. The words hung in the air, sharp and impossible. You're the chosen one. The sirens grew louder, a wail that climbed the side of the building and bled through the windows. The man on the floor, Kevin, kept his eyes locked on mine. The lucid smile was still there. It didn't belong on his face. It was a mask on top of a mask. The figure in the hallway was gone. I knew it without looking. The watcher had retreated. The next wave was coming. Heavy boots pounded in the hallway. 2 uniformed cops burst through the open door, hands on their holsters, eyes wide, taking in the scene. The trashed room, the broken lamp, Alex and I kneeling, and the man tied on the floor. Police! Don't move, one of them yelled. The spell broke. Alex raised his hand slowly. He broke in, Alex said, his voice cracking. He attacked us. The cops were professionals. They moved fast. One covered us while the other cuffed Kevin, hauling him to his feet. Kevin didn't resist. He was limp again, his head lolling. The smile was gone. The blankness was back. System error, he mumbled as they dragged him out. Reboot required. Another pair of officers came in. They started taking our statements. I tried to explain. My voice felt like it was coming from a great distance. There was another one, I said, pointing at the door, in the hall, watching. The officer writing in his notepad, a guy with a thick mustache and tired eyes, didn't look up. Watching? And the phone call, Alex chimed in, his words tumbling out too fast. Someone called his phone. They call themselves Controller. They're a group. A club. The Panopticon Club. He was holding out the metal card, the group photo. The cop took them, glanced at them for a second, then put them in an evidence bag. A club, he repeated, his tone flat. He wasn't asking. He was just saying the word. It sounded stupid when he said it. They said this was Act 1, I insisted. They knew he was caught. They were watching us. They're still watching. The cop finally looked at me. He had the kind of look people give a stray dog that won't stop barking. Pity mixed with annoyance. Son, we've got your attacker in custody. We'll sweep the building. You're safe now. Safe. The word was a joke. A punchline to a story I didn't understand. You don't get it, I said, my voice rising. This isn't just some break-in. We'll take your full statement down at the station in the morning, the other cop said, his tone final. For now, this apartment is a crime scene. You can't stay here tonight. You got a place to go? Alex nodded. He can stay with me. They taped off my door, a yellow line separating my life from the rest of the world. As we walked down the hall, I kept looking back. The yellow tape was a banner declaring my defeat. We got in Alex's car. The engine turning over was the loudest sound in the world. He just drove. Neither of us spoke. The adrenaline was gone, replaced by a deep, heavy exhaustion that felt like lead in my bones. The city lights smeared past the window. Faceless buildings, dark windows, any one of them could be watching. The chosen one, Alex finally said, his voice a whisper. What the hell did he mean? I shook my head. I don't know. It's a game. It's all a game to them. We were on the expressway. The rhythm of the road was almost calming. Almost. I glanced in the rearview mirror, out of habit. Headlights. A car behind us. I looked away. A few minutes later, I looked back. Same headlights. A boxy, dark sedan. It was keeping a perfect distance. "Alex," I said. "I see it," he answered. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. A coincidence. It had to be. This was a major road, thousands of cars. I watched the sedan. Alex took the next exit. A long, sweeping ramp. The sedan's blinker came on. It followed us. My heart started a slow, heavy drum beat against my ribs. "Okay," Alex said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Just a coincidence." He made a right turn, then a quick left. The streets were getting smaller, more residential. Trees hung over the road, making everything darker. The sedan was still there. Always the same distance. It wasn't chasing us. It was escorting us. A shadow tethered to our bumper. "Lose him," I said. Alex didn't need to be told. He gunned the engine. The car lurched forward. We took a corner too fast, the tires squealing in protest. We raced through a sleeping suburb, blowing through stop signs. I craned my neck, looking back. For a moment, the street was empty. "Did we?" Alex started. Then, the headlights appeared again. It turned the corner, slowly, deliberately, and settled back into its position behind us. It hadn't even tried to keep up. It had known where we were going. The air in the car was thick. I couldn't swallow. My phone buzzed in my pocket. The sound made me jump. At the exact same second, Alex's phone buzzed on the dashboard mount. We both stared at his screen. Unknown number. One new message. "Don't," I whispered. But we both knew we had to. Alex pulled the car over to the curb. The black sedan behind us also pulled over, its lights still on, pinning us in their glare. With a trembling finger, Alex tapped the notification. A video. He pressed play. The image was grainy, shot from a moving car at night. It was the back of Alex's head, the back of my head. It was us, right now, filmed from the sedan. My stomach twisted. The camera was impossibly steady. It felt like the cold, patient gaze of a predator. The view shifted, zooming in on our license plate until it filled the screen. A proof of life, a proof of ownership. Then the scene cut. My blood went cold. It was a living room. I knew the floral wallpaper. I knew the ugly glass-top coffee table. I knew the woman sitting on the couch, her back to the camera, a book in her lap. My mother. A shape moved into the frame behind her. A man, dressed in the same black gear as Kevin, wearing the same blank ski mask. He didn't do anything. He just stood there, his masked face pointed at the back of her head. My mother didn't know he was there. She just kept reading, safe in her home, while hell stood 3 feet behind her. The video ended. The screen went black. A new message appeared beneath the video. Text this time. Drive. That was it, one word. A command. The phone in my pocket buzzed again. Another message. It was a single pin, dropped on a map. An address in a desolate industrial park on the other side of town. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. There was a sound in my ears, a high-pitched whine. They had her. This whole night, the invasion of my apartment, it wasn't the main event. It was just to get me out. To get me in this car. To get me here. The black sedan behind us flashed its high beams once, twice, an impatient prod. "Leo!" Alex's voice was a choked sound. "What do we do?" There was nothing to do. No choice to make. They had taken away choice. They had taken away everything. "Drive," I said. My voice was hollow. It didn't sound like me. Alex put the car in gear. He followed the map on my phone. We drove in silence. The sedan followed. We weren't being chased anymore. We were being herded, livestock on the way to the slaughterhouse. The address led us to a dead-end street lined with derelict warehouses. Rusting fences, shattered windows. A graveyard of commerce. The sedan directed us, flashing its lights to tell us which gate to turn into. The gate was already open, waiting for us. We pulled up in front of a massive, windowless brick building. The sedan parked behind us, blocking any chance of escape. 2 men got out. They weren't wearing tactical gear, just simple black clothes. Their faces were hard, impassive. They didn't run. They walked toward us with a purpose that turned my limbs to ice. One of them motioned for us to get out of the car. We obeyed. The night air was cold. It smelled of rust and damp decay. They didn't frisk us. They didn't speak. One of them just gestured with his chin toward a large, rolling metal door on the side of the warehouse. It was slightly ajar, a sliver of yellow light spilling out onto the cracked asphalt. An invitation. I walked. Alex was right behind me. Every step was a conscious effort. I felt like a man walking to his own execution. We reached the door. I pushed it. It rolled aside with a low groan. The space inside was vast. The ceiling was lost in shadows far above. The air was still and cold. Most of the warehouse was dark, but in the center of the concrete floor, a single harsh spotlight illuminated a small circle. In the center of that circle sat a single chair. A man was sitting in it. His back was to us. He was wearing an expensive-looking suit. He didn't move. The two men who brought us here were gone. The metal door slid shut behind us with a heavy, final thud. The sound echoed in the huge space. We were sealed in. Alex and I stood there, frozen on the edge of the darkness, staring at the figure in the light. My heart was a hammer pounding against my ribs. Was this the controller? The man whose digital voice had torn my world apart? For a long moment, there was only silence. The kind of silence that presses in on you, that you can feel in your ears. Then the chair swiveled around. Slowly, the man in the chair looked at me. He had neatly combed hair, a clean-shaven face. He was smiling. It wasn't a menacing smile. It wasn't a cruel smile. It was a placid, corporate, encouraging smile. The kind of smile he gave me after I nailed a quarterly review. My brain refused to process what my eyes were seeing. It was impossible. It was a system failure. A short circuit. It was Mr. Henderson, my boss. He looked from my face to Alex's, his smile widening slightly, as if he were greeting us for a morning meeting. The whole horrific night, the terror, the violence, my mother, it all collapsed into this single, unbelievable point. He leaned forward slightly in his chair, his hands clasped together. "Leo," he said, his voice calm and familiar. "Welcome to the final test." My mind was a blue screen of death. The two images, my boss at a quarterly review and my boss in a warehouse of horrors, refused to compute. They crashed against each other, a system error that sent sparks down my spine. "What is this?" Alex's voice was a croak, barely a whisper. He took a half-step back, pulling us further into the shadows at the edge of the light. Mr. Henderson, it was him. It was absolutely him, kept that placid smile. He didn't seem to notice the terror locking our limbs in place. He looked like he was about to offer us a coffee. "This," he said, his voice the same calm, measured tone he used when explaining profit margins, "is an audition. Or, more accurately, the final callback." He spread his hands, a gesture encompassing the light, the chair, the vast emptiness. "Our company, the one you think you work for, is a very effective, very profitable entity. But its greatest asset isn't data analytics, Leo. It's talent scouting. We look for individuals, people with a certain resilience, people who don't break when the world tries to snap them in half." My head was spinning. The words made no sense. Talent scouting? An audition? "The man in my apartment," I managed to say. "Kevin." "Employee of the month," Henderson said without a trace of irony. "A bit overzealous, perhaps, but effective. He played his part perfectly. All our actors do." He gestured to the darkness behind him. A low hum filled the air, and a section of the brick wall lit up. It wasn't a wall. It was a screen the size of a movie theater. My own face stared back at me. It was footage from my apartment. A view from a camera hidden in my smoke detector. I saw myself pacing, talking on the phone. Then the screen split. A new angle from the webcam on my laptop, which I always kept closed. Except it wasn't. The screen split again, and again. My living room, my kitchen, my bedroom, even my bathroom, my entire life, my private space, laid out like a security feed in a prison. "Every candidate's home is an observation stage," Henderson explained, his voice a dispassionate narration over the video. The footage jumped forward. The lights in my apartment flickered and died. I saw myself from 4 different angles, standing in the dark. The screen cut to the hallway, a new camera I didn't know existed. It showed the shadowy figure standing there, just watching. A paid actor. We introduced stimuli, Henderson continued. Test for paranoia, for isolation response. The footage changed. Now it was Kevin, smashing through my door. The fight. The terror. It was all there, a high-definition recording of the worst night of my life. I saw myself, a wild animal cornered and terrified. I saw Alex, brave and stupid, wrestling with the intruder. We test for loyalty to allies, Henderson noted, as if commenting on a lab report. For the instinct to protect. He let the silence hang for a moment as we watched ourselves, 2 puppets on a screen, the phone call, the controller's voice, the video of the car, the video of my mother, all of it. A production, a very sick show where I was the only one who didn't have the script. Why? Alex breathed out. What the fuck is all this for? Henderson finally turned his full attention to Alex. The smile vanished. His face became a cold, flat mask of professional assessment. For the same reason, a nation forges steel for its warships. To find the strongest material. For decades we have been searching. We subject candidates to tailored psychological pressures, supernatural scares, random violence, technological terror. We find their deepest fears and we build a world around them. Most break. Some go insane. A few simply die. Heart attacks. Accidents trying to escape. Self-inflicted. He looked back at me. The encouraging smile returned, but now it looked like a skull's grin. But you, Leo, you're different. You've endured every phase. You've adapted. You've made it further than anyone. Now there is only one test left. His voice dropped, became intimate, conspiratorial. Loyalty. Not to your past, but to your future. He snapped his fingers. One of the men in black emerged from the darkness. He walked with a dead, mechanical stride. He wasn't carrying a weapon. He was carrying a small, metal table. He placed it in the circle of light between us and Henderson. He set something on it. A pistol. Black, heavy, and real. Every asset must be secured, Henderson said. Every loose end, tied off. He nodded toward Alex, is a loose end. A civilian witness. A liability. The air turned to ice. I stared at the gun, then at Alex. His face was a mess of confusion and dawning horror. You're insane, Alex spat. Henderson ignored him. His eyes were locked on me. The video of your mother is paused, Leo. The man behind her is very patient. He will wait for my command. You have 2 choices. Eliminate the liability, and you prove you're one of us. You secure your mother's safety, and you take your seat at the table. A life you cannot imagine awaits you. My mouth was dry. I couldn't swallow. And if I don't? I whispered. Henderson's smile didn't falter. Then I unpaused the video, and he gestured to Alex, will join her shortly after, and your audition will be terminated, permanently. The choice hung in the air, a physical weight pressing down on me. I saw my mother's face in my mind. The floral wallpaper, the man in the mask. Leo, Alex said, his voice shaking. Leo, don't listen to him. This is crazy. We can fight. Fight? Fight what? An army of shadows? An organization that could plant cameras in my bathroom? Pick it up, Leo, Henderson urged, his voice like silk. Show us who you are. This is the moment. Your real life starts now. I could feel my own heart, a frantic drum against my ribs. My hands were shaking. I looked from the gun to Alex's terrified face. I looked at Henderson's calm, expectant expression. The world narrowed down to the circle of light. To the gun. To the choice. My feet moved on their own. One step. Then another. I was a puppet, and Henderson's words were the strings. I reached the table. My hand trembled as it hovered over the cold metal of the pistol. Yes, Henderson whispered. That's it. My fingers closed around the grip. It was heavier than I'd imagined. Solid. Deadly. I lifted it. The weight of it felt like the weight of my soul. I raised the gun. I pointed it straight at Alex's chest. He gasped. His hands went up, a useless gesture of surrender. Tears welled in his eyes. Leo, no, please. Fire, Henderson commanded. His voice echoed in the vast, silent space. "End it. Join us." My finger was on the trigger. I felt the smooth curve of the metal. I felt the tension in my own arm. I saw Alex's face, my friend, the only person who had stood by me. And I saw my mother's face, safe, reading a book. A sound tore out of my throat, a scream of rage and despair and pure, animal defiance. In one violent motion, I swung the gun to the right, away from Alex. I aimed it at Henderson, and I squeezed the trigger. The explosion was deafening. The gun kicked hard in my hand, the smell of burnt powder stinging my nose. The sound blasted through the warehouse, a roar of rebellion. I saw the small poof of fabric on Henderson's left shoulder as the bullet struck home. A dark, wet circle bloomed instantly on his pristine suit jacket. He flinched, but he didn't fall. He didn't even cry out. He simply looked down at the wound, his expression one of mild curiosity, like a man noticing a stain on his tie. He touched the growing patch of blood with his fingertips. Then he looked back up at me. The corporate smile was gone, replaced by a look of profound, almost paternal disappointment. "Wrong answer," he said, his voice still unnervingly calm. Behind me and Alex, from the deep, suffocating darkness that ringed our island of light, a sound began. A soft, collective shuffle. The scrape of a boot on concrete. The rustle of fabric. It wasn't one person. Shadows detached themselves from the greater shadow. Figures, dozens of them, all dressed in black, emerged silently from the periphery. They formed a solid, closing ring around us, their faces indistinct, their presence absolute. We were surrounded. The test was over. And we had failed. The silence that followed the gunshot was a physical thing. It pushed in on my eardrums, heavier than the blast itself. The smell of burned powder hit my nose, sharp and chemical. My arm ached from the kick of the pistol. Across the circle of light, Henderson stood, a look of profound disappointment on his face. He didn't look angry. He looked like I had failed a math test. He glanced at the dark red stain spreading on his shoulder, a small, wet flower blooming on the fabric of his expensive suit. "Wrong answer," he repeated, his voice level. The figures in the dark stopped moving. They had formed a perfect, unbroken circle around us, a wall of black suits and blank faces. They didn't draw weapons. They didn't need to. Their stillness was more threatening than any gun. The air crackled. My heart was a frantic bird beating against my ribs. Fight? Fight what? A corporate army? Pox! Two of them broke from the circle. They moved with a purpose that was terrifying. Not rushed, just efficient. One came for me, the other for Alex. The man who approached me had a calm, empty face. He reached out, and his fingers closed around the pistol still hot in my hand. I didn't resist. My strength was gone. He twisted it from my grip with an easy, practiced motion. Rough hands grabbed my arms, pinning them behind my back. The man behind Alex did the same. Alex grunted, a flicker of his old fear returning to his face. Or so I thought. "Take them to Sector B," Henderson commanded, his voice tight with a hint of pain now. He pressed a hand against his bleeding shoulder. "The audition is terminated, Sector B." It sounded like a place where things ended, a place for failures, for loose ends. My mind was a blank slate. I had made my choice. I had stood for something. For my friend. For what was right. And this was the price. My mother's face flashed in my mind, the image frozen, the masked man behind her. A wave of sickness washed over me. What have I done? Hi-ya! They started to drag us away across the cold concrete floor, out of the lonely circle of light, and into the oppressive darkness of the warehouse. My feet stumbled. Alex's feet shuffled beside me. It was over. Then a voice cut through the silence. "I think he's proven his point, sir." The voice was calm, composed, measured. It was Alex's voice. I stopped dead. The men holding me had to tug hard to get me moving again. I twisted my head, the motion jarring my neck. I stared at Alex. He wasn't struggling anymore. He wasn't fighting. He was walking calmly between the two men holding him, as if they were his personal escort. The fear was gone from his face. Utterly, in its place was an expression I had never seen before. A kind of cool, professional assessment. He was looking at Henderson. What? Oh. The men holding Alex let him go. Just like that. They stepped back, melting into the larger group of shadows. Alex stood freely, brushing a piece of lint from his sleeve. He stood straighter. The panicked, wide-eyed friend who had been cowering beside me moments ago was gone. A stranger stood in his place. My brain refused to compute. It was like watching a movie that had suddenly skipped reels, jumping to a scene that made no sense. Henderson looked at Alex. A flicker of a smile, a real one this time, touched his lips. He nodded, a small gesture of approval. "You did well, Alex," Henderson said, his voice laced with pride. "You pushed him to the edge perfectly, a textbook escalation." No. The world tilted on its axis. The concrete floor seemed to fall away beneath me. The hands holding my arms were the only things keeping me upright. My gaze darted between Alex's placid face and Henderson's knowing smirk. The circle of dark suits. The warehouse. The test. It wasn't a stage with two actors. It was a stage with one. And I was the audience. Alex was one of them. "The controller," I whispered. The word was a puff of air, barely a sound. The distorted voice on the phone. The one that knew things. The one that sent the videos. Alex turned his head and finally looked at me. His eyes were cold. They were the eyes of a scientist looking at a lab rat. There was no friendship there, no shared terror, no history, nothing. "An old toy," he said, his voice the same one from the phone calls, just without the electronic distortion, the casual cadence, the slight pauses. It was him. It had been him all along. Helps to maintain distance, keep the subject off balance. The memories flooded me, twisted and poisoned. Alex showing up at my door, worried. Alex helping me barricade the windows. Alex bravely fighting Kevin, the paid actor. Alex convincing me to come back here to face them. All of it, every word of support. Every shared glance of fear. It was all part of the script. My best friend. My only ally. He had been the director of my personal hell from the very beginning. A sound tore from my throat. A raw, strangled noise of pure betrayal. "Why?" I screamed, the sound echoing in the vast, empty space. I thrashed against the men holding me, a useless, pathetic struggle. "Why?" Alex just looked at me, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Was it pity? Contempt? He gave a small, dismissive shrug. The casual gesture of it broke something inside me. "It wasn't your test, Leo," he said, his voice flat. He took a step toward me, into the edge of the light. The man I knew was gone. This new person wore his face like a mask. "It was mine." He stopped a few feet away. The circle of men watched us, silent. Henderson watched us, a bleeding judge. "Everyone in this organization has a final," Alex explained, as if he were talking about a college course. A thesis project. Mine was to select a candidate from the pool, someone with the right psychological markers. Isolation, latent paranoia, a strong protective instinct. My job was to design and execute a full-spectrum stress simulation. To personally manage all the stimuli, the tech scares, the stalker, the physical intruder. To befriend the target. To become their anchor in the chaos I was creating. He held my gaze. My test was to see if I could guide you all the way to this exact moment, this choice. Could I manipulate an asset so completely that he would be willing to kill his only friend to save himself? If you had shot me, Leo, I would have passed. And you would have become one of us. The truth was a physical blow. I wasn't the star of the show. I was a prop. A final exam question. All my terror, my sleepless nights, my fight for survival, it was just a grade on his report card. The ultimate gaslighting. My reality had been completely, utterly manufactured by the one person I trusted. And if I shot Henderson? I choked out, the words tasting like ash. What was that part of the test? A genuine, cold smile finally spread across Alex's face. That was extra credit, proving that when the asset breaks, I can still control the fallout. He gestured at Henderson. He's fine. The bullet will be a souvenir, a story to tell new recruits. The betrayal was so absolute, so complete, it left no room for anger. All that was left was a hollow, echoing emptiness. The foundation of my world had been a lie, and the architect of that lie was standing right in front of me, looking bored. He stepped closer, moving into my personal space. The man holding me didn't flinch. Alex leaned in until his lips were right beside my ear. The warmth of his breath on my skin made me want to vomit. He whispered, his voice so low it was just for me, a final, secret nail in my coffin. You know, I always kind of envied you, Leo, your easy confidence. The way things just seemed to work out for you. I don't anymore. His words hung in the air, a petty, rotten jealousy at the heart of it all. That was the reason. That was the why. He pulled back and looked me in the eye one last time. Then he nodded. I saw the motion out of the corner of my eye. One of the men behind me moved. I didn't have time to react, to even brace myself. Something hard and heavy slammed into the side of my head. A burst of white-hot pain. The sound was a wet, ugly crunch inside my own skull. The stars exploded behind my eyes. The strength went out of my legs. The hands let go. And the world went black. The first thing I felt was pain. A dull, throbbing drumbeat behind my right eye. It was a heavy, sick kind of pain. The kind that came from a collision. I groaned, a dry crackle in my throat. The sound was swallowed by carpet fibers. My face was pressed against the floor. My floor. I knew the smell. Stale coffee and dust. The cheap, scratchy feel of the Berber carpet I'd been meaning to replace for a year. I pushed myself up with one arm. The room swam into focus, a nauseating blur that slowly sharpened. My living room. Sunlight, thick with dust motes, streamed through the blinds. It striped the floorboards and the worn arm of my couch. My busted laptop sat on the coffee table next to a stack of unpaid bills. Everything was exactly as it should be. Exactly as I'd left it. When? The warehouse. The circle of light. Henderson's bleeding shoulder. The gunshot still echoing in my bones. Alex's face, changing from friend to stranger. The cold, dead eyes. The whisper. The impact. I scrambled to my feet, my legs unsteady. A wave of dizziness made me grab the back of the couch. My head pulsed with a vicious rhythm. I touched the side of my head, expecting wetness, a matted knot of blood. My fingers found nothing. Just hair. No lump. No cut. Only the deep internal ache. It didn't make sense. Nobody was here. The front door was chained. The windows were shut. No broken glass. No splintered wood. Just the quiet hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. The normal, lonely sounds of my apartment. I stumbled to the kitchen, my heart a frantic hammer against my ribs. I ripped open the fridge. A half-empty carton of milk. A sad-looking apple. A bottle of water. I grabbed the bottle, my hand shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I twisted the cap off and drank, the cold water a shock to my system. I leaned against the counter, breathing hard. My own reflection stared back at me from the dark screen of the microwave. Pale face. Wild eyes. Just me. This is wrong. All of it. My phone. I needed my phone. I patted my pockets. Nothing. I lurched back into the living room, my eyes scanning the mess. It was on the floor by the couch, face down. I snatched it up. The screen lit up with my old wallpaper, a picture of a coastline I'd never visited. The time was 10:17 a.m., Tuesday. I stabbed at the screen, my thumb slick with sweat. I pulled up my call log, my finger hovered, shaking. The last call was to my mother, 4 days ago. Before that, a pizza place. Several calls to Alex. I scrolled down, my breath held tight in my chest. Nothing. No blocked numbers. No unknown callers. No calls from Henderson. My text messages. I opened the app. A notification from my cell provider. A message from my landlord about rent. A thread with Alex from last week. full of stupid memes and complaints about work. No threats. No terrifying images of my mother. No video links. It was all gone, or it was never there. What the hell is happening? My finger, acting on its own, pressed the contact for Alex. It started dialing. The sound was a shrill spike in the silence. It rang once, twice. My mind screamed at me to hang up. What would I say? What would he say? Leo? Dude, holy shit. The voice was Alex's, not the cold, dead voice from the warehouse, but the Alex I knew. The Alex who sounded worried, confused. My Alex. Where the hell have you been, man? I've been calling you for 2 days. I was about to call the cops. Are you okay? I couldn't speak. My throat was a knot of cement. The words were there, fighting to get out, but they died before they reached my lips. The warehouse. The gun. You did this. You did all of this. Leo? You there? You sound weird. Are you sick? Alex, I managed. The name felt like broken glass in my mouth. Yeah, it's me. What's going on? You went dark after we grabbed drinks on Saturday. I thought maybe you met someone. He chuckled. It was a normal, easy chuckle. The sound made my skin crawl. Saturday? He said Saturday. That was before Kevin, before the barricades, before everything. No, I said, my voice a hollow whisper. Something happened. What happened? Talk to me, man. You're freaking me out. The lie was so perfect, so seamless, he sounded genuinely concerned. The doubt, a small, poisonous seed, began to sprout in the wasteland of my mind. What if the warehouse was a dream, a nightmare, a hallucination brought on by, what? Stress? A fever? Had I been sick for 2 days, lost in a fever dream so real it felt like memory? No. The pain in my head, the crystal clear image of his face, his words. It was my test, Leo. I had a bad dream, I stammered, the words tasting like poison. A pause on the other end. Then, a sigh of relief. Jesus, Leo, you had me thinking you were in a ditch somewhere. A bad dream? That's it? Must have been one hell of a dream to make you ghost everyone for 2 days. Yeah, I said, one hell of a dream. Well, look, get some coffee in you. Call me later, okay? Let me know you're not dead for real. Okay, I whispered. Talk to you later, man. He hung up. The line went dead. I stood there, the phone pressed to my ear, listening to the silence, the crushing, absolute stillness of my apartment. The sun was still shining. The refrigerator was still humming. The world outside my window was still moving. And Alex, my best friend, was worried about me. I was losing my mind. That was the only explanation left. The events of the past week, the terror, the paranoia, the final bloody confrontation, none of it was real. It was a story my own mind had invented, a complete fabrication. The organization, the masked man, the stalker, all phantoms born from a broken brain. Alex wasn't a monster. He was my friend. And I was crazy. The thought was colder than any fear I'd felt before. The terror of an external threat was one thing. You could fight it. You could run from it. But how do you run from yourself? How do you fight your own mind when it becomes the enemy? Fuhawa. The apartment, my only sanctuary, now felt like a cell, a padded room. Every normal object seemed to mock me. The TV, the couch, the coffee table. They were all witnesses to my descent, their silence a damning judgment. I started to pace, a caged animal, back and forth. From the kitchen to the living room window, 10 paces, turn, 10 paces back. I had to find something, one thing, one piece of proof that I wasn't insane. A crack in this perfect, normal world. I checked the front door again. The chain was on. The deadbolt was thrown. I remembered barricading it with the heavy bookcase. I looked over. The bookcase was in its usual spot against the wall, covered in a thin layer of dust. The books were all perfectly aligned. I ran my fingers along the wood. No scratches, no scuffs. I went into the bedroom. My bed was a mess of tangled sheets, just as I'd left it. I tore the covers off. Nothing. I dropped to my knees and looked underneath. Dust bunnies and a missing sock. I pulled open my closet, clothes spilling out. Nothing. The bathroom. I stared at my reflection in the mirror above the sink. My eyes were bloodshot. Dark circles hung beneath them like bruises. I looked haunted. I looked like a man who hadn't slept in a week. I looked exactly like a man who had gone through hell. Or like a man who was dangerously ill. I gripped the sides of the sink, my knuckles white. Breathe, Leo. Just breathe. My eyes darted around the small room. The clean white tiles. The damp towel on the floor. The shower curtain? Everything normal. Everything in its place. Wait. Not everything. My gaze locked onto a spot on the wall, near the ceiling, right next to the small, slatted cover of the air vent. A dark patch. A smudge of black against the white paint. It was small, no bigger than my palm. I'd never seen it before. I let go of the sink and stepped closer, my heart starting to pound again. It wasn't a smudge. It was textured. A spiderweb of fine black filaments. It looked like mold. A nasty, dark patch of it, thriving in the corner where the air was damp. It looked almost alive. Veins of black spreading out from a central, darker core. I reached up, my fingers trembling. I needed to touch something real. Something that was out of place. This was out of place. This was wrong. I needed to know what this was. I stretched, my fingertips just brushing the edge of the dark patch. The second my skin made contact with the wall, the world ended. Not with a sound, but with a rush of everything at once. The smell of gun smoke and ozone burning my nostrils. The icy chill of the concrete warehouse floor seeping into my bones. The blinding glare of a single, low-hanging light bulb. A gallery of faces. Henderson's disappointed smirk, the blank masks of the men in suits, and Alex's face, my friend's face, twisting into a mask of cold triumph. The sound of his voice, not through a phone, but right there, inside my head, a clear, sharp echo. My test was to see if I could guide you all the way to this exact moment. This choice. The brutal, wet crunch of something heavy hitting my skull. White fire. Pain. I snatched my hand back as if I'd touched a live wire. A strangled gasp tearing from my throat. I stumbled back, hitting the opposite wall and sliding down to the floor. My body was shaking uncontrollably. I looked up. The sunbeam was still there, cutting through the living room. The refrigerator was still humming its low, steady tune. My apartment was quiet. It was normal. I looked at my trembling hand. It was clean. Then I looked back at the wall. The patch of black mold was still there. A dark, silent stain on my reality. A flash of memory. A nightmare. An illusion. Or a memory of the truth, breaking through the lie. I didn't know. I didn't know which was the dream and which was the nightmare. I was trapped between two worlds, and I didn't know which one would kill me first. I sat on the cold tile of the bathroom floor, shaking, staring at the stain on the wall, and for the first time, I was truly, completely afraid of what was going to happen next. My breath hitched, a dry little click in the quiet of the bathroom. I scrambled up from the tiles, my legs weak. My eyes were fixed on the black stain on the wall. The memory, the flash of the warehouse was still fizzing behind my eyes, a chemical burn on my brain. It felt real. More real than the quiet hum of the refrigerator, but it couldn't be. I stumbled out of the bathroom, away from the stain, my back hitting the opposite wall of the hallway. I slid down, my gaze darting around my own living room. A prison. A cell. A padded room. The pain in my head wasn't a dull ache anymore. It was a sharp, focused point of agony. My own mind was lying to me. But which part? The flashback or the quiet apartment? Poor. The mold. The thought came out of nowhere, clean and sharp. The black patch. My laptop was on the coffee table. I crawled towards it on my hands and knees, every movement an effort. The floor felt strange, the carpet fibers like tiny needles against my skin. I flipped the screen open. The light was blinding. My hands shook as I opened a browser. The search bar blinked at me, a single, patient cursor. What do I even type? My fingers moved on their own. Black mold making you see things. Enter. A wall of blue links hit me. Medical sites. News articles. Forums full of frantic posts. I clicked the first one. A government health page. My eyes scanned the text, snagging on keywords. Stachybotrys chartarum. Toxic black mold. Thrives in damp, water-damaged buildings. My building was a century-old wreck. The landlord used tape and paint to fix everything. Produces mycotoxins. When inhaled, these can cause a range of neurological symptoms. I kept reading, my heart starting a low, heavy drumbeat against my ribs. Symptoms may include memory loss, confusion, difficulty concentrating, check, and check, anxiety, depression, and a feeling of being in a brain fog. I swallowed hard. The last few days had been nothing but fog. In severe cases of prolonged exposure, individuals have reported vivid hallucinations, both auditory and visual. Paranoia is common, a feeling of being watched or followed, the words blurred. I clicked on another link, a news story, a family who had to abandon their home, a quote from the mother. It was like we were losing our minds. We heard whispers. We saw shadows in the corners of our eyes. My husband became convinced someone was breaking in every night. He started barricading the doors, the bookcase, the barricade I thought I'd built. My blood went cold. It all started clicking into place, one horrible, logical piece after another. The story my brain had built, the elaborate conspiracy, the masked men, the tests. It began to crumble, not into dust, but into something far more mundane and terrifying. The loud noise I heard from the fire escape a week ago? Not an assassin. An old pipe in an old building, finally giving out. The feeling of being watched? The paranoia, a textbook symptom. The reflection in the window? A trick of the light, twisted by a mind already primed for fear. The block number. The threatening texts. The video. What if I sent them to myself? In a state of confusion, a fugue caused by the mold. Maybe I found some sick website, some horror ARG, and my poisoned brain latched onto it, weaving it into a personal reality. It would explain why the call logs and messages were gone. I deleted them myself, with no memory of doing it. The handprint on the window. It wasn't someone trying to get in. It was my own handprint, from a night I don't remember, pressing against the glass, looking out for an enemy that didn't exist. And Alex, my best friend. The warehouse. His cold eyes. His confession. It was my test, Leo. A perfect climax. A perfect villain reveal. A story so complete, so satisfying in its horror, that only a mind desperate for answers could have written it. My mind. The call this morning. His genuine worry. His easy chuckle. That wasn't an act. That was real. The monster in the warehouse was the hallucination. The friend on the phone was the truth. This realization didn't bring relief. It was a plunge into a different kind of ice water. The terror of a faceless organization is one thing. You can try to expose it, you can run. But this? There was no one to fight. No conspiracy to uncover. No villain to unmask. The enemy was the very air I was breathing. The quiet apartment was no longer a sign that I was safe. It was a sign that I was alone with the poison. The hum of the refrigerator wasn't a sound of normalcy. It was the engine of the machine that was driving me insane. Each breath I took pulled more of the toxin into my lungs, more of the madness into my brain. The walls weren't just walls. They were coated in it. The air was thick with it. This place, my home, my sanctuary, was actively trying to kill my mind. I was trapped. Not by a man with a gun, but by something worse. I was a prisoner in my own skull, and my own skull was a prisoner in this apartment. I pushed away from the coffee table, scrambling backward until my back hit the couch. My eyes scanned the room, and for the first time, I saw it all clearly. Every shadow seemed to flicker. Every piece of furniture seemed to shift when I wasn't looking directly at it. The dust motes dancing in the sunbeam looked like spores. Black spores. I had to get out. The thought was a lifeboat. A single, clear command in the chaos. Get. Out. I lurched to my feet. The room tilted, but I didn't care. I stumbled into the bedroom, ripping open my closet door. Clothes spilled onto the floor. I grabbed the duffel bag I used for the gym. I started stuffing things inside, my hands acting on raw instinct. T-shirts. Socks. Jeans. I didn't know what I was grabbing. I just needed to fill the bag. To have a mission. I moved to my dresser, pulling open drawers. Underwear. Phone charger. Wallet. My keys. I had my keys. I could leave. I could walk out the door and just breathe air that wasn't trying to unmake me. The bag was half full, but it was enough. I slung it over my shoulder. It felt heavy, real, an anchor in the swirling chaos of my thoughts. I walked out of the bedroom, my steps heavy and loud on the floorboards. I didn't care about noise now. There was no one to hear me, no one but me. I reached the front door. My hand, still trembling, went for the deadbolt. It was thrown. The metal was cold. I turned it. The thunk of the bolt retracting was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. It was the sound of freedom. Next, the chain. My fingers fumbled with the metal slide. It was stiff. I yanked it free. It swung down, clinking against the wood. Just the doorknob now. One more turn, and I was out. Out on the landing, down the stairs, out on the street. I could call Alex. I could tell him I was sick, that I needed help. He would come. He was my friend. The real Alex. I gripped the knob, turned it. The latch clicked. I pulled the door open. Sunlight from the hallway window flooded in, making me squint, and a figure stood in the light, hand raised, poised to knock. It was Alex. He looked exactly like he sounded on the phone, worried. His brow was furrowed. His hair was a mess. He was wearing an old band t-shirt I hadn't seen in years. "Leo?" he said, his voice laced with relief and confusion. "Thank God. I've been calling you for an hour. You said you'd call me back. I was getting worried again, so I came over. Are you going somewhere?" His eyes flicked down to the duffel bag on my shoulder, then back to my face. His expression softened. "Hey, man, you look awful. Are you okay?" I stared at him, at my friend, my best friend, standing right here, real, solid. The logical part of my brain, the part that had just read the articles about the mold, screamed at me. This is him. This is Alex. He's here to help. You're sick. Let him help you. But another part of my brain, the part that had felt the crunch of the impact at the warehouse, that had touched the black stain on the wall and seen the truth, whispered a different story. It's a trick. He knew you were leaving. He's here to stop you. His face was a mask of concern. But was it? I looked closer. The corners of his mouth. Was that a slight upturn? The look in his eyes. Was it worry, or was it something else? Something cold and calculating, watching me, judging my reaction. This could be another hallucination, the most complex one yet. A perfect replica of my friend, designed to lure me back inside, back into the poison. I couldn't breathe. "Leo?" he said again, taking a step forward. "Talk to me." That step was all it took. A switch flipped. Pure animal instinct took over. I took a step back, into the darkness of my apartment. "No," I whispered. Alex's face crumpled in confusion. "No? What are you talking about?" I took another step back. My hand was still on the door. Without thinking, I swung it shut. The slam echoed in the hallway, loud and final. I threw the deadbolt. The thunk was a sound of capture now, not freedom. I fumbled with the chain, sliding it back into its slot. Trapped. I had trapped myself. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic prisoner. I pressed my eye to the peephole. The fisheye lens warped the hallway. Alex stood there, his image distorted and strange. He looked stunned. He stared at the door for a second, then his expression of confusion melted away. It didn't turn to anger. It didn't turn to sadness. It transformed into a slow, knowing smile. A wide, predatory grin that didn't reach his eyes. His eyes were cold, flat, and triumphant. The same eyes from the warehouse. He raised his hand, the one that had been about to knock, and gave a small, mocking wave. A scream ripped from my throat, raw and broken. I stumbled back from the door, my duffel bag sliding off my shoulder and hitting the floor with a dull thud. "You can't fool me!" I yelled at the door, my voice cracking. "You're not real! I know what you are!" There was no answer from the other side, just the low, steady hum of the refrigerator, and the silent, spreading stain in the other room. The peephole went dark. His face was gone. The smile was gone. But I could still see it, burned onto the back of my eyes, that cold, knowing smile. The game was on, and he knew he was winning. My scream died in my throat. I backed away from the door, my feet shuffling on the floorboards. The silence in the apartment rushed back in to fill the space my terror had made. It wasn't empty. It was heavy. It pressed on my ears. The only sound was the refrigerator, humming its low, constant, mindless tune. The engine of the poison. I know what you are. The words I'd yelled were just noise now. What did I know? I knew the mold was real. I had read the articles. I knew the hallucinations were a symptom. And then I knew I had seen Alex's face change. That smile was not a trick of the light. It wasn't a product of a poisoned mind. It was a message. You figured it out, Leo. You figured out the mold. Clever boy. But you're wrong about which game you're in. My mind was a battlefield. Two truths fighting for control. One was a slow, creeping death by spores. The other was a fast, cruel hunt by a man I called my best friend. Which was worse? To be driven mad by your own home, or to be hunted by someone you trust? The smile I saw through the peephole answered that question. They weren't two different truths. They were one. The apathetic mold was the arena. Alex was the gladiator. The organization was the crowd, watching from the stands. They weren't just letting me get sick, they were using it, sharpening the paranoia, directing the hallucinations. This wasn't a test of endurance anymore. This was a test of will. They wanted to break me, to make me give in, to make me do it to myself, to prove that under the right pressure, anyone will snap. A perfect, clean experiment with no witnesses and a built-in explanation. Tragic. He was suffering from severe psychosis due to toxic mold exposure. No, I wouldn't give them the ending they wanted. I wouldn't be their lab rat. If I couldn't get out, I had to prove I was still me, that I wasn't their puppet. I had to do something they didn't expect. I had to show them I was still in control. My legs, acting on their own, carried me away from the front door, deeper into the trap, into the kitchen. The room was dark, the single window looking out onto a brick wall. The air was thick here. I could taste it, a damp, earthy flavor on my tongue. My eyes landed on the butcher block next to the sink. It was full of knives. Steak knives, a bread knife, a large cleaver, and a small, simple paring knife. A 3-inch blade, a black plastic handle, plain, unassuming, a tool. I stared at it. It wasn't a weapon against them. They were outside. They were in the walls. They were in my head. A knife couldn't fight spores or a conspiracy. But it was a thing I could hold, a choice I could make. They were watching. I knew they were, through the cameras I could never find, through my own laptop, maybe through my own eyes. They were waiting to see what I would do. Run and hide? Scream and cry? Curl up on the floor and wait for the madness to take over completely? Ha! That's what they wanted. My hand was shaking as I reached out. My fingers closed around the plastic handle. It was cool, solid. It felt realer than the floor beneath my feet. I wasn't going to hurt anyone. I was just going to hold it, to feel the weight of a decision in my hand. Proof. Such a small gesture, Leo. The voice slid into my mind like a sliver of ice. It wasn't my voice. It was his. Alex's. The cold, clinical version from the warehouse. Do you really think holding a knife makes you a player? You're just a piece on the board, and the board is crumbling. Shut up, I whispered, my knuckles white on the handle. Look at you, another voice joined in, this one wheezing and old. Mr. Henderson, my landlord, the one who fixed a leak with duct tape. Always knew you were weak. Living in my building, breathing my air, my mold. You belong to the house now, boy. The voices weren't just in my head. They were in the room. They came from the humming refrigerator, from the dripping faucet, from the dark space under the cabinets. They were the sound the apartment made. You're not real, I said, louder this time, turning in a slow circle. The kitchen seemed to stretch, the walls pulsing gently with the rhythm of my own frantic heartbeat. Oh, we're real, Alex's voice laughed. It was a stereo effect now, coming from my left and my right. We're the part of you that sees the truth. There is no escape. There never was. The moment you moved in, the game was set. The only thing left to decide is how you lose. I stumbled out of the kitchen, back into the narrow hallway. I needed to see something real, something that wasn't talking to me. My eyes landed on the hall mirror, a cheap, full-length mirror I'd hung on the back of a closet door. I saw my reflection, a man I barely recognized. Pale face, wild eyes, sweat-soaked hair plastered to his forehead. He was holding a knife. He looked terrified. He looked like the victim they wanted me to be. I stared, my breath catching in my chest. My reflection's eyes met mine. And then, something was wrong. Very wrong. I was frozen in terror, my mouth a hard, thin line. But my reflection, the corners of its mouth began to curve upwards. Slowly. A deliberate, horrifying smile stretching across its face. It was the same smile. Alex's smile from the peephole. A smile of total victory. I didn't move. I couldn't. I just watched as this other me, this thing in the glass, stood there grinning, a predator admiring its trapped prey. Its eyes, colder than Alex's, held mine. It knew. Then, it spoke. Its voice was my own, but calm, rational, and completely devoid of hope. It didn't come from the mirror. It bloomed inside my own skull. You see, it said, they're not out there. They're in here. I am the part of you that understands. The part that knows this has to end. Yelling won't work. Hiding won't work. You can't escape yourself. The reflection raised its free hand, the one not holding the knife, and pointed. Not at me, but past me, toward the living room, toward the sliding glass door that led to the small, useless balcony overlooking the street. There's only one way to end the game, my smiling reflection said. One way to win. You take yourself off the board. Win. The word echoed. To win. Not to survive. Not to escape. To win. To do the one thing they couldn't force me to do, the one thing I had to choose. To end it on my terms. To rob them of their conclusion. It was a twisted, insane piece of logic, but in the chaos of my mind, it was a lighthouse. A final, defiant act. A middle finger to the unseen audience. You want me to lose? I screamed at the thing in the mirror. You want to see me break? Its smile widened. The switch flipped. The terror didn't vanish. It transformed. It became fuel. A hot, clean rage. I wasn't a rat in a maze anymore. I was a bomb. I won't let you win! I roared, the sound ripping from my chest. I spun away from the mirror, the paring knife clutched in my fist. I ran. I charged into the living room, toward the balcony door. And then they were there. They weren't shadows anymore. They were solid, figures in dark tactical gear, wearing blank white masks. Two of them. One materialized from the hallway I'd just left. The other stepped out from behind the couch. They were silent, their presence a suffocating weight. They moved to block my path to the door. This was it. The final stage. They were dropping the pretense. No more mind games. Just force. I didn't slow down. I screamed, a raw battle cry, and lunged at the one by the couch. He raised his hands to grab me. I wasn't aiming for him, just for the space he occupied. I slashed wildly with the knife. The blade caught on his sleeve, a tearing sound. I didn't know if I'd cut him. I didn't care. I shoved past him, stumbling, my shoulder slamming into his body. He felt solid, real. The second one grabbed my arm, a grip like a vice. His other hand reached for the knife. I twisted, pulling my arm free, the friction burning my skin. I kicked backwards, my heel connecting with his knee. There was a grunt of pain. It might have been his. It might have been mine. I was at the door. The vertical blinds rattled as I slammed against them. My hand fumbled for the lock on the sliding glass door. It was stiff. My fingers were slick with sweat. A hand clamped down on my shoulder, trying to haul me back. I spun around, slashing with the knife again, a wild arc in the air. Get off me! The masked figure reeled back. I didn't wait to see if I'd connected. I turned back to the door, using both hands to wrench the lock open. It gave way with a loud click. I grabbed the handle and yanked. The door slid open with a screech of metal on metal, letting in the sounds of the city, the cool evening air. Freedom. The air tasted clean. I took one step out onto the concrete of the balcony. The small space was surrounded by a low, iron railing. 3 floors down. The street was a blur of headlights and noise. I turned, ready to face them, to make my final stand. But there was no one there. The living room was empty. The masked men were gone. The couch was exactly where it had always been. There were no signs of a struggle. My duffel bag lay on the floor by the front door. The apartment was just an apartment. Quiet. Still. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. I looked down at the knife in my hand, then at my other arm. A long, red scratch ran from my elbow to my wrist, welling with blood. The cut from the struggle. The masked man grabbing me. But there were no masked men. I did this. That was me. I looked back, down at the street below. The cars. The people. They were moving, living, completely unaware of the war. One was losing in my own head. You take yourself off the board. My reflection's voice was calm in my ear. I leaned forward, my hands gripping the cold iron railing. It was the only solid thing left in the world. A loud crash came from behind me, the sound of my front door splintering. Heavy footsteps pounded into the apartment. Leo! A voice. A real voice. Alex's voice. Full of panic. They were too late. The game was over. I was already winning. I pulled myself up, my feet finding purchase on the bottom rung of the railing. The wind whipped at my shirt. The city lights were bright, beautiful, and a million miles away. From the room behind me, a new set of footsteps. A different voice shouting. But they were all just sounds. Part of a world I was already leaving. The siren started then. A faint wail in the distance. Getting closer. Closing in. A perfect soundtrack for the end credits. The building manager, a heavy man named Stan, hit the door with his shoulder for the third time. The lock splintered, and the door flew open, slamming against the inside wall. Alex pushed past him, his face a mask of primal fear. "Leo!" he screamed again. They rushed through the small living room. Alex saw the open balcony door first. He sprinted towards it, Stan puffing behind him. They skidded to a halt on the concrete, their eyes scanning the empty space. They saw the scuff marks, the overturned plastic chair. They saw nothing else. Alex lunged for the railing, leaning his whole body over, his knuckles white as he gripped the iron. He stared down into the street 3 floors below. His cry was a raw, broken thing, lost in the rising scream of approaching sirens. Stan stood frozen in the doorway of the balcony, his hand over his mouth. He looked back into the apartment, at the knife lying on the floor, at the long, bloody scratch on the inside of the living room doorframe, at the silence. And for the first time, he noticed the smell. It hit him with the force of a physical blow, not the smell of a dirty apartment, but something else. Something thick and wet and deeply, fundamentally wrong. The overwhelming, inescapable stench of black mold.